Chapter 1821. Movements of the Demon Cult 3. Now, the remaining forces of the Divine Kingdom of Three Cauldrons were stationed in the royal capital. They used their powerful formations and the treasures of the kingdom to fend off the Ninth Army. They had reached a temporary stalemate. The remainder of the Divine Kingdom was extremely powerful with their formations and treasures. Even though the Empyrean Demon Cult was far stronger than the Divine Kingdom, they struggled to take the royal capital immediately. However, both the Ninth Army and the residual forces of the Divine Kingdom understood that this stalemate would not last for too long. It was only a matter of time before the Ninth Army completely destroyed the Divine Kingdom of Three Cauldrons. The news of the war between the Empyrean Demon Cult and the Divine Kingdom of Three Cauldrons had spread long ago. Even though many organizations found the Empyrean Demon Cult repulsive, they were all filled with a sense of helplessness from how powerful the organization was. As a result, even when the Divine Kingdom of Three Cauldrons had been completely surrounded by the Empyrean Demon Cult, even when the Divine Kingdom of Three Cauldrons requested for assistance, no one went to help them. This was because the Divine Kingdom of Three Cauldrons was up against the terrifying Empyrean Demon Cult. Even though they could easily hold off the Ninth Army or even destroy it if they worked together, no one dared to take action. There was still the Eighth Army and the Seventh Army after the Ninth Army. There was even the First Army, which was enough to cause many people to pale in fear. As a result, many people sympathized with the Divine Kingdom of Three Cauldrons, but no one dared to do anything about it. At this moment, there was a reasonably sized military base 100 kilometers away from the royal capital. The base was not particularly big, and dark clouds rolled in the sky above it. A demonic presence gathered there. Every single soldier in the base practiced extremely powerful and brutal demonic cultivation methods, so not only did they possess extraordinary cultivation levels, but their battle prowess was extremely great as well. It was exactly because of this that they could annihilate the gigantic army of the Divine Kingdom with just 100,000 people, and make their way to the royal capital. There was a grand divine hall in the center of the base. The divine hall was completely red as if it had been covered in blood. A metallic smell of blood seemed to be present. Just standing outside the divine hall would be enough to overwhelm most people. At this moment, someone suddenly slammed a table heavily. A cold growl followed. 10 years. It has been 10 whole years, and our Ninth Army still hasn't gotten through to the royal capital. Do the three of you even have brains? Why don't you think about a way that will allow you to take down this place as soon as possible? I've stared at this shitty city for 10 years already. I get angry just from glancing at it now. The speaker was a burly man. He currently sat on the commander's seat as he stared at the generals around him. The burly man was the commander of the Ninth Army. He was known as the Blood God Hand, Yan Wuming. At the same time, he was an extremely powerful God King. The generals all became rather pale as they faced their furious commander. Clearly, they feared the commander very much, and their hair stood on end as a result. Yan Wuming. At this moment, a cold voice rang out in the hall. An illusionary and extremely handsome man in white robes appeared. The young man's face was slightly feminine. At first glance, he seemed like an indescribably handsome man, but looking at him again, he seemed more like an alluring beauty instead. If it were not for his chest, many people would have believed him to be a woman. Yan Wuming stared at the young man coldly, and the viciousness in his eyes did not decrease at all. His lips curled into a smile, and he said coldly, "I was wondering who bold enough to call me directly by my name had come. Turns out it's just Protector Zeng. Protector Zeng, you must not be bored enough to just come to check on what I'm doing since you projected yourself here from so far away. Hurry up, and say what you need to say. Once you're done, get out of my territory." Yan Wuming, so mighty of you. I'm a protector of the cult. I can go wherever I want where the 9 armies are present. Just you aren't enough to tell me what to do. Protector Zeng said coldly. I don't have the time to bicker with you, you unmanly and unwomanly transgender. Hurry up and say what you have to say, then get out of here. Yan Wuming said impatiently as a vicious light flickered through his eyes. You, Protector Zeng was furious, and his face paled as a result. He pointed at Yan Wuming angrily, but seeing how fearless Yan Wuming was, he did nothing in the end. Even if were present personally, he would not be Yan Wuming's opponent, Not to mention the fact that he was only a soul projection right now. Sucking in a deep breath, Protector Zeng forcefully suppressed his anger and said coldly, "I've only come for one matter. Have you captured God King Duanmu's successor?" "Humph. Can't you see I'm invading the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons? They have 3 God Kings. If I'm not watching over the entire operation, my 9th army would be reduced to a wreck by the 3 of them. Why the hell would I have the time to care about God King Duanmu's successor? Moreover, he's got nothing to do with me," Yan Wuming said coldly. Protector Zeng sneered. "Yan Wuming, I'll be honest, it's Vice Leader Huayan who cares about God King Duanmu very much. Before long, he'll emerge from seclusion. Once he finds out that God King Duanmu's successor is still alive and free, he'll lose his temper. I don't think that's something you can bear." Yan Wuming finally became stern. Clearly, he dreaded the vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult very much. "Yan Wuming, I've brought the message. What you do is up to you. Farewell." With that, Protector Zeng vanished. Yan Wuming sat on the commander's seat emotionlessly. A light flickered through his eyes as he thought about what he should do. A while later, he passed an order to a general below him. "Lu Shan, take some people and go capture Ling Hogong for me." Chapter 1822. The Royal Capital of Pingtian. "Yes, sir." A general below stood up and dropped one knee to the ground, accepting the orders with courtesy. Lu Shan left the divine hall. Without any hesitation, he summoned his vice-generals. "General Lu, what's happening? Are we attacking the royal capital seeing how urgently you've summoned us?" Very soon, 2 burly men in tight, black robes strode over from afar as a demonic presence churned around them. Although they seemed like they were just strolling about leisurely, they could easily cross hundreds or even thousands of meters with each step. It was like the distance was nothing more than a few inches. They were still several kilometers away when they began talking, and it had taken them less than 5 seconds to finish their words. However, in just that short period of time, they had crossed the distance and appeared before General Lu Shan. "You must have heard about the matter regarding God King Duanmu's successor." Just then, Protector Zeng personally came to ask about it in the form of a soul projection. As a result, the commander has ordered us to go to the divine kingdom of Pingtian to capture Ling Hogong. "You 2 come with me," Lu Shan said to the 2. Not only were these 2 his deputies, but they were also his brothers that had gone through thick and thin with him. Protector Zeng personally asked for this? Why do I remember that our commander has always been on bad terms with Protector Zeng? Why would he listen to him? One of the deputies asked in confusion after hearing Lu Shan's words. Lu Shan became stern and growled. "Vice Leader Huai is about to emerge from seclusion." The expressions of the 2 deputies changed when they heard that. They could not help but become polite and show respect. "We should not tarry then. General Lu, let's set off as soon as possible. Though this Ling Hogong sure has some prestige. He could raise the attention of Protector Zeng, and even get our commander to order us personally to capture him." Hehe. Now that we 3 overgods are moving out personally, Ling Hogong shouldn't be able to complain about dying in vain. The 2 deputies sneered as a vicious light shone in their eyes. On the roads that extended in all directions outside the majestic royal capital of the divine kingdom of Pingtian, many cultivators gathered daily. Merchants flowed in and out of the huge city gates. From time to time, there would even be luxurious carriages pulled by rare, invaluable beasts that slowly made their way towards the royal capital. Without a doubt, the people within those carriages were people with quite some power. However, regardless of the greatness of their backgrounds, flying was forbidden when entering the royal capital. Even the organizations with overgods were affected. This was all due to their respect towards the royal capital. Only God Kings could ignore the rules and directly fly into the city. Hold on to it. That is your pass into the city. Remember, you have to pay 10 low-grade divine crystals for every day you spend within the royal capital. Otherwise, the guards of the city will take you away. A guard explained to Jianchen outside the city gates as he handed a medallion to Jianchen. Jianchen entered the city after taking the medallion. What dense origin energy! Compared to the provincial city of the Dong'an province, it's several times more. Not only is there quite a large vein of divine crystals below the royal capital, But there are also formations in the city that draw over all the origin energy in the surrounding radius of 10,000 kilometers. What extravagance! Jianchen strolled through the streets of the royal capital as he observed the surroundings in interest, and studied the layout of the city. Now that his comprehension of the laws of the sword had reached the level of late over God, his perception was far greater than before. He could see through many hidden things with just a single glance. The entire city is enveloped by an extremely vast formation. Every single street and store is connected to the formation, causing the entire city to become as tough as steel. Even battles between overgods would not be able to create any damage to the structures in the city. The huge formation has already reached the level of God Kings. Only God Kings can smash through it. And aside from the defensive formations, there's also trapping and killing formations in there. With these formations, even God Kings would probably fail to leave unscathed if they came to make trouble. Jianchen marveled from the bottom of his heart. The royal capital was so powerful that it made him sigh emotionally after seeing it. He thought about how he would be truly free of worries if the formations of the provincial city in the Dong'an province were so powerful. At this moment, Jianchen came to a halt. He casually glanced past a building that he was about to pass by, and he immediately caught sight of the 3 words, True Sword Pavilion. They were written in a fancy font. Vaguely, a sharp sword chi seemed to surge out. Clearly, the place was a shop that specialized in flying swords. After pausing for a moment, Jianchen entered without any hesitation at all. The pavilion was filled with a great collection of various flying swords. Small groups of people gathered within the large store as they studied the swords like gentlemen. They would shake their heads in disappointment at times, and they would also nod and praise at other times. A few pretty women received them as customers politely with businesslike smiles, presenting swords to them patiently. Among them there was a group that stood out the most. They had basically become the center of attention in the shop, attracting the gazes of everyone present. The group consisted of 2 women and 1 young man. One of the women possessed devastating beauty. Not only was her beauty and bearing extraordinary, but she also possessed an otherworldly charm. Her expression was gentle, making her seem quiet. A single glance was enough to make people feel warm inside. The other woman also possessed extraordinary beauty. Her face was filled with an uncontainable sense of arrogance. From her curled lips, she was clearly a rude and unreasonable woman. The young man was dressed in luxurious robes and was extremely handsome. However, his face was filled with arrogance as if he looked down on everyone. Evidently, he was a wastrel from a powerful clan. A few guards stood behind each of them. Even though they were only at the peak of reciprocity, they were clearly not nobodies. At this moment, the young man smiled as he spoke gently to the soft-spoken woman beside him. Uncontainable adoration filled his eyes. Chapter 1823. True Sword Pavilion. The other arrogant woman could not help but become slightly annoyed when she saw how the young man treated her sister so lovingly, while ignoring her. Her face darkened slightly. "Welcome, young master. How may I be of service?" At this moment, a gentle voice rang out from behind. A graceful female employee who seemed to be in her 20s went up to receive Jianchen. She smiled slightly and behaved extremely politely. Jianchen glanced past the collection of flying swords casually. He showed some disappointment and asked the lady, "Do you have any better swords? Such as high quality or even better, supreme quality?" Jianchen's flying snow sword had been destroyed long ago. In the past few years he never had a sword that suited him. One reason was because it was impossible to find a better flying sword in the place like the Dong'an province, and also because medium-quality saint artifacts were no longer of any use to him with his current strength. Even high-quality saint artifacts would not be able to last him for very long. Only supreme-quality saint artifacts would suit him. However, even a high-quality saint artifact had never appeared in the provincial city of the Dong'an province, so let alone a supreme-quality saint artifact. "What? You're looking for a supreme-quality flying sword?" The lady who received Jianchen immediately changed in expression when she heard him, and cried out in disbelief. Her cry immediately drew over the attention of the other customers in the store. Immediately, They all turned their heads over and stared at Jianchen in surprise. Even the two beautiful women and the young man who seemed to be a wastrel looked at Jianchen. Did I really just hear that? Really? Someone actually wanted to buy a supreme quality saint artifact? Surely I've heard wrong. There's actually someone who wants to buy a supreme quality saint artifact. Where has this country bumpkin come from? Wanting to buy a supreme quality saint artifact as soon as they enter the store. I'm laughing my ass off. What does he think a supreme quality saint artifact is? Does he think it's any old item you can find off the street? Or does he really not know just how valuable a supreme quality saint artifact is? The young man could not help but burst into laughter. His voice was filled with mockery and recklessness. This is just hilarious. Ha 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 ha, I'm really laughing my head off. As the young man laughed, the arrogant woman could not help but laugh aloud as well. She stared at Jianchen like she was looking at an idiot. Even the beautiful, quiet lady could not help but smiled slightly as she studied Jianchen closely. However, when the young man saw her smile, his face immediately sunk heavily. A sliver of coldness appeared in his eyes and he swore inside. God damn it. Ruru's actually smiled. She's actually smiled. I've pursued her for so long but she's never smiled at me before. Yet just a single sentence from this country bumpkin who can from who knows where has made her smile. God damn it. At this moment, the young man's gaze towards Jianchen became laced with some ill intentions. The flames of envy burned within his gaze. Bastard. Not only can this country bumpkin make Ruru smile, he just happens to be handsome as well. Damn it. Screw him. The young man became furious as his gaze gradually turned into a glare. Jianchen frowned. He glanced past the young man and woman who laughed at him. At the same time, he realized inside that he had probably underestimated the value of supreme quality saint artifacts. Don't you have any supreme quality saint artifacts for sale here at all? Jianchen asked the lady. The lady looked at Jianchen strangely. Even though she had already labeled Jianchen as a person who definitely did not come to buy swords, she still replied politely, Young master, I must disappoint you. There are indeed no supreme quality saint artifacts here. Let alone our true sword pavilion. Probably even the entire kingdom doesn't have any place that sells it. This is because probably only the divine king His Majesty possesses a supreme quality saint artifact. Supreme quality saint artifacts are actually that valuable? Jianchen murmured. His breath had been taken away secretly. The value of supreme quality saint artifacts far exceeded what he anticipated. The lady who received Jianchen rolled her eyes when she heard what he had said. She felt extremely miserable inside. He actually did not even know the value of a supreme quality saint artifact, and still wanted to buy it. Was he not the standard country bumpkin? Haha, he doesn't have any idea just how valuable a supreme quality saint artifact is. He has no idea about them and probably hasn't even seen one in his life before. Yet he dares to speak so boldly that he wants to buy one? I'm laughing my head off. This is the first time I've seen someone so queer in my entire life. He probably doesn't even have the power to use a supreme quality saint artifact if he really did get his hands on one. The arrogant woman giggled as disdain filled her eyes. Jianchen frowned. Even with his current level of cultivation, he had no interest in fussing over things with a mere deity. However, after being made fun of time and time again, no one could remain in a good mood. He immediately stared at the woman coldly and said nonchalantly, Lady, whether I've seen a supreme quality saint artifact or not doesn't seem to have anything to do with you. Even if I really can't use one, what has it got to do with you? The arrogant woman glanced at Jianchen with deep disdain. She did not reply to him, as if Jianchen had no right to hold a conversation with her. She turned towards the soft-spoken woman beside her and said, Sister Ruru, let's go. Let's ignore this country bumpkin. No matter how handsome he appears to be, he can't hide the truth of being a country bumpkin. The arrogant woman paused there and glanced at Jianchen again with disdain. She continued, Even if it's all acting, it'll explain that he has other intentions for everything he's done. Without a doubt, that intention would be to attract Sister Ruru's attention, or even try steal Sister Ruru's heart slowly. But he's underestimated Sister Ruru far too much. Does he think that his petty tricks can get past us? Instead, he's only worsening his impression. The arrogant young man nodded constantly. He said, that's right, that's right. Xiao Shui's very correct. Ruru, we've seen all the swords on the ground floor. They're not suitable for you. Let's go to a higher floor instead. Maybe we can find a suitable sword for you there. The young man did not want to remain on the same floor as Jianchen any longer. As soon as he thought of how the country bumpkin had made Ruru smile, he felt greatly threatened, regardless of why Ruru had smiled. Chapter 1824. A member of the Yang family, he would not have minded it too much if that country bumpkin was nothing too special in terms of appearance, but he just happened to be even more handsome than himself. He felt even more unhappy when he sensed the great confidence that the country bumpkin exuded. The girl called Ruru nodded gently. She seemed gentle and quiet, such that all her actions made her seem like the daughter of a large family. She did not give off any sense of arrogance. After staring at Jianchen again to study him, she went upstairs with the other two. The young man just happened to see Ruru's actions, so his face immediately became even uglier. He glared at Jianchen angrily before going up. Jianchen completely ignored all of this. With his increase in strength, his mental state had changed gradually as well. The wastrel from a large family who was only a deity at most just seemed like an immature child in his eyes. Was an adult supposed to get into an argument with a child after being insulted? That would just be petty. Moreover, he knew that he really had been a little too abrupt in asking for a supreme quality saint artifacts as soon as he made it through the door. Then do you have any high-quality flying swords? Jianchen asked again. He could only change his request seeing how supreme quality flying swords were unavailable. The lady who received Jianchen glanced at the few people who had already gone upstairs. All of their backgrounds were terrifying. Clearly, she had become slightly impatient towards Jianchen's question, but she did not show it at all, as she had gained a rough idea that Jianchen had probably mentioned supreme quality saint artifacts to attract the attention of the girl called Ruru. Now that he asked about high-quality saint artifacts, it was probably an excuse so that he could go upstairs as well. Young master, our store just happens to have a few high-quality saint artifacts, but they're all upstairs. The lady maintained her business smile, and did not show a trace of what she was thinking. Take me there, Jianchen said without any hesitation at all. He truly lacked a suitable weapon right now. Yes, young master. Please follow me. The lady was filled with contempt inside, but she still led Jianchen to the next floor extremely politely. Jianchen found the three people with just a single glance as soon as he arrived on the next floor. They were currently choosing a flying sword with great attentiveness under the protection of their guards. The three people clearly discovered Jianchen as well. The young man's face immediately sank, and he roared out furiously, "Brat, you really know how to stick around. You're following us wherever we go. If you're clever, piss off, or don't blame me for being impolite." The young man believed that everything that had happened with Jianchen was a coincidence back on the first floor. However, after listening to the arrogant woman's words, he partially believed that Jianchen had only come to the True Sword Pavilion to draw Ruru's attention. In fact, he had hurriedly proceeded to the next floor with Ruru so that Jianchen would not be able to capture her attention too much. However, he never thought that Jianchen would actually follow them up as soon as they went to the next floor. It only consolidated his thoughts. He believed that Jianchen had come for Ruru. Ruru was his beloved goddess. How could he let someone that was just as handsome as him garner her attention? As a result, he made up his mind to not let Jianchen stay no matter what. The arrogant woman also showed some impatience when she saw Jianchen come up as well. However, she then seemed to think of something. A gleam of light flickered through her eyes. The person that Yang Tai truly likes is Ruru. As long as Ruru remains unwed, Yang Tai will never give up. That person seems competent after all. If he can really steal Ruru's heart, it'll be fantastic for me. At the very least, Yang Tai can give up on Ruru. As soon as she thought of that, not only did the arrogant woman stop feeling annoyed by Jianchen's presence, but she even became slightly eager for Jianchen to steal Ruru's heart. Yang Tai clearly wants to move against him now. With Yang Tai's background, that person is in big trouble. I have to help him, thought the woman. Just when she wanted to assist Jianchen to break free from the situation, she heard Jianchen's voice ring out. Don't you think too highly of yourself? I've come here to buy a sword, and it's a complete coincidence that we're up here together. How can you say that I'm following you? Moreover, I'd suggest you watch your mouth, or you'll be making trouble, Jianchen said calmly and slightly coldly. As the saying went, even the kindest of people could become displeased. Even though Jianchen despised falling to the same level as people like him, he could only do something about it, and teach them a lesson if they crossed his bottom line. Jianchen's somewhat threatening words stunned all the people on the floor. They all glanced over and stared at him in disbelief. The lady who had brought Jianchen to the floor paled slightly. She knew exactly what background the young man possessed. It was one of the greatest clans in the royal capital. Few people were willing to offend them. Isn't that person just too reckless and fearless? Doesn't he know who he's threatening? It's the young master of the Yang family, the lady thought to herself. She was at a loss about whether bringing Jianchen up was a mistake or not. The outcome of offending the Yang family was never good. For a moment, even the young man was dumbstruck. He stared at Jianchen in a daze and still seemed to be at a loss. This was the first time someone had threatened him. Jianchen ignored everyone's surprise. He arrived before a few high-quality swords by himself and began studying them carefully. He could tell with a single glance that there were only 4 high-quality flying swords on the floor. Although there were quite a few other swords, they were all medium quality. At the same time, 2 of the 4 high-quality swords possessed an attribute. They respectively shone with a dazzling, fire-red light and an earthen yellow light. A powerful white glow surrounded the other 2 swords. From outside, they only seemed to be balls of dazzling white light, making it very difficult to see the swords themselves. Jianchen's eyes shone. He studied the 2 swords without blinking at all. He was able to see through the light emitted, and observe the swords hidden inside extremely clearly. How much for this sword? Jianchen pointed at one of the high-quality swords, and asked the lady serving him. It was also at this moment that Yang Tai finally returned to his senses. His face sank, and he became furious. He pointed at Jianchen and bellowed out, "How dare you threaten me? Do you know who I am?" As Yang Tai called out, the guards he had brought with him began to move as well. They all surrounded Jianchen and glared at him viciously. Although they were only at the peak of reciprocity, even a few deities or gods would not dare to touch them in the royal capital. This was because touching them would be offending the Yang family, and the Yang family was a clan that was particularly prideful. Chapter 1825. The Flying Sword, Startling Rainbow, Bring me his tongue. I don't want him to be able to speak after today. Then break his limbs and take him back to the clan. I want him to understand the consequences of threatening me. Yang Tai ordered the guards. Yes, young master. The guards all responded. Cold light flickered through their eyes as they moved against Jianchen in an attempt to capture them. All of them were extremely well trained. They worked together extremely cohesively. Clearly, they had done similar things countless times before. However, just when their hands were about to touch Jianchen, a stream of white light flickered. The white light was extremely small. It was only the size of a finger, but it appeared at an unbelievable rate. With their strength at the peak of reciprocity, they had failed to even sense its appearance before it vanished again. In the next moment, all the guards felt a heart-wrenching pain from their arms. They could not help but cry out miserably. Blood spurted out like fountains from where their shoulders were. The guards had all lost their arms, having been severed unknowingly. The eyes of the people on the floor all narrowed before widening. They stared at the armless guards in disbelief. They were all filled with shock. At the same time, they also experienced some confusion and doubt. None of them were powerful. Apart from the girl called Ruru, who was an early deity, everyone else was at reciprocity. They were unable to sense the appearance of the light at all with their strength. As a result, they had no idea just how the guards had lost their arms. They only saw the guards reach out towards Jianchen. However, just before their arms were fully extended, their arms tore free from their bodies without any prior signs at all. The limbs directly fell to the ground. It was extremely strange. Only the girl called Ruru managed to sense the flash of white light with her strength as a deity. Disbelief filled her eyes. She stared at Jianchen without blinking at all as he remained standing there in his white clothes. He remained composed. She also failed to see Jianchen do anything. As a matter of fact, Jianchen had not even moved a finger from what she could see. However, she clearly knew that the severed arms of the guards were directly related to Jianchen. The guards all paled and shrieked out in pain. Combined, their voices were deafening. Let alone the entire store. But even the people outside on the streets could hear their shrieks clearly. Jianchen frowned. If you want to shriek, go downstairs. Don't get in the way of me buying a sword. With that, Jianchen kicked out a few times without any mercy at all, sending the guards out of the window as if they were unwanted. They landed on the street outside heavily. His actions immediately caused the lady who served him to pale. She thought, "That's it, I'm done for. This person has completely offended the Yang family. The Yang family will never just leave the matter like this. Although it has got nothing to do with me. I was the one who brought him upstairs after all. Even I probably won't be able to avoid the punishment of the Yang family. Why you actually injured my guards. Do you know who I am? I am the young master of the Yang family." Yang Tai paled in anger as he pointed at Jianchen. He was absolutely furious. The Yang family? Jianchen's expression remained the same. He could not help but study the young man carefully. He asked, "Is it Yang Kai's clan?" Yang Tai's face lit up when he heard that. He thought that Jianchen was afraid now, so pride immediately filled his face. He said arrogantly, "That's right, Yang Kai is my great-grandfather. Looks like you haven't exactly been living under a rock, seeing how you know about my great-grandfather. If you're clever, kneel immediately and lower your head 9 times to the ground. I won't make things difficult for you today." Yang Tai could only be blamed for failing to see the small details here. He failed to see how Jianchen remained completely the same when he mentioned Yang Kai's name. Jianchen's expression did not change at all. He did not reveal even a trace of fear. He even mentioned Yang Kai's name directly without adding something like, "Senior," as other people would. Your great-grandfather does indeed have some strength, but who knows just how many people are more powerful than your great-grandfather. There are some people that you can't afford to offend. You'll only end up slaughtered, Jianchen said calmly. His voice was somewhat cold as he continued. "I'll let you go this time because of your great-grandfather, but only this one time." That's right. There are many people far more powerful than my great-grandfather in the world, but you're not one of them. Moreover, you don't even have the right to talk to me with your lowly status. However, I will remember what you said today. I would like to see just how much longer you can continue to act so arrogantly, Yang Tai said angrily. He knew that he was not Jianchen's opponent, so he could only return and rally some other people. Afterwards, he turned towards Ruru and said, "Ruru, let's go." "Young Master Yang, I still haven't chosen my sword yet. You can go back first," the gentle Ruru said to Yang Tai. Yang Tai's face immediately became extremely ugly. Waving his sleeve, he turned around and left with a sunken face. "Yang Tai, wait for me." The arrogant woman bid farewell to Ruru in a hurry and immediately chased after Yang Tai with her own guards. "How much for this sword?" Jianchen looked at the sword that had caught his attention again, and repeated the question to the lady serving him. The lady stood by Jianchen's side. At this moment, she was tempted to break into tears. She no longer cared about whether Jianchen had really come to buy a sword or not. Even though she would receive a significant reward if she really sold a high-quality flying sword, she no longer cared about that now. She only wished for Jianchen to leave sooner and draw away the Yang family's attention. The true sword pavilion did not fear the Yang family with their background, but she was just an employee without any background at all. It was also her who brought Jianchen upstairs. As such, if the Yang family decided to look into the matter, she would definitely be in trouble. However, she just happened to not be bold enough to say all this. Her customer was a person who did not even fear the Yang family, so he definitely came from a large clan as well. She could not afford to offend someone like that either. "Young master, the flying sword is called Startling Rainbow. Its price is 6 million high-grade divine crystals," the lady said uneasily. What? 6 million high-grade divine crystals? Jianchen was shocked when he heard the price. When he bought the flying snow sword in the Dong'an province, it was only 100,000 mid-grade divine crystals. Chapter 1826. Greedy. The flying snow sword was a medium-quality saint artifact, while the startling rainbow sword was only a high-quality saint artifact. They were only a single tier apart, but the price was several hundred times more. This shocked Jianchen very much. Jianchen stared at the sword that was surrounded by dazzling light and sword qi. He fell silent in that moment as the light in his eyes flickered. He was hesitating. Clearly, the price of the sword had far exceeded Jianchen's expectations. It actually required a terrifying amount of 6 million high-grade divine crystals. They were high-grade, nothing like mid- or low-grade divine crystals. He still possessed the 10 blocks of high-grade divine crystal, which was more than enough to purchase the sword. However, he originally planned to break up the divine crystals into mid- and low-grade ones, so that Shangguan Mu'er and the others could use them to cultivate. He had not planned to spend so many here. 6 million high-grade divine crystals were equivalent to 600 million mid-grade divine crystals. Such an amount was enough for everyone to cultivate until they were gods. Of course, that was given that their comprehension of laws could keep up with their cultivation. Young master, the startling rainbow sword is actually relatively cheap among the high-quality saint artifacts. Many better high-grade saint artifacts are worth billions. May I ask if the young master is still interested in purchasing this high-quality saint artifact? The lady asked. Although she spoke very politely, there was a sense of urgency in her voice that anyone could tell. Her inquiry at the end even slightly sounded like she was chasing Jianchen away. It was like she was asking him to hurry up and buy the saint artifact or get lost. This was because Jianchen had offended the Yang family. If Jianchen remained, she would be pulled into the matter as well. So she naturally hoped for Jianchen to leave sooner, so that the Yang family would direct their attention elsewhere. Jianchen also seemed to notice the underlying message in the lady's voice. He glanced at her and said nonchalantly, medium-quality saint artifacts are only around 100,000 mid-grade divine crystals. Why are high-quality saint artifacts so pricey? Looks like you don't understand the value of high-quality saint artifacts. At this moment, a gently voice rang over. It was a very natural and pleasant voice. The girl called Ruru looked over. The light in her limpid eyes shone as she stared at Jianchen very calmly. She said, "The reason why there's such a great disparity in price between medium and high-quality saint artifacts is because high-quality saint artifacts are very difficult to forge, and the materials required are extremely difficult to find. In the divine kingdom of Pingtian, there are many people who can forge medium-quality saint artifacts. They're present in basically all provincial cities. As a matter of fact, there are even some provincial cities with several such artifacts. However, people who can forge high-quality saint artifacts are almost mythical existences. Even including the neighboring kingdoms, there are only 4 or 5 of them. On the other hand, there is not a single person like that in our divine kingdom of Pingtian. All the high-quality saint artifacts basically come from other divine kingdoms, which is why they're so valuable." The girl called Ruru stared at Jianchen deeply after saying that. She continued, "The supreme quality saint artifacts that you wanted earlier are even more valuable. Not only are they hundreds of times more valuable than the startling rainbow sword, but they might even 1,000 times more valuable. There's basically no supply." "Thank you for informing me." Jianchen clasped his fist towards Ruru. He had finally gained some understanding towards high and supreme quality saint artifacts from Ruru's explanation. "There's no need to be so polite, young master. It's just that you've offended the Yang family earlier. With how the Yang family normally acts, they'll never let this matter go. It's best if you leave this place sooner. Even if you possess some background and do not fear the Yang family, Yangtai probably won't let the lady who brought you here off so lightly," Ruru said to Jianchen nonchalantly. Jianchen frowned when he heard that. The lady that received Jianchen indeed paled in fright at that moment. Blood drained from her face, and even her body trembled gently. She was filled with fear. "I'm buying the sword," Jianchen said to the lady. With a wave of his hand, 6 blocks of high-grade divine crystal directly fell to the ground, producing a deep thud. The lady immediately became stunned. She stared at the 6 blocks of divine crystal in a daze as her breathing became rather ragged. At the same time, she was greatly taken aback. She had never expected Jianchen to actually purchase the high-quality saint artifact. Moreover, Jianchen had not even raised an eyebrow when he took out 6 million high-grade divine crystals. Even the girl called Ruru became slightly surprised. She did not think Jianchen would possess so many divine crystals either. Even to a few overgods, 6 blocks of high-grade divine crystal was a tremendous sum. Please wait, young master. I'll call the manager over this instant. The lady hurried off. Excitement and joy filled her face. She had just successfully sold a high-quality saint artifact. Not only would her commission be an astronomical figure, but it was also enough for her to receive a promotion. Once she possessed a certain level of status in the True Sword Pavilion, there would be no need for her to worry about any problems from Yang Tai. Very soon, the manager hurried over and successfully completed the transaction with Jianchen. Before long, Jianchen took the startling rainbow sword he had just purchased out of the store. He found a large, luxurious inn and directly reserved their best room. He closed the door and hung the sign "Secluded Cultivation" on the door. After doing so, he began to refine the startling rainbow sword without pausing during the entire process at all. With this high-quality saint artifact, my strength will increase by quite a lot. It's just a pity that I can't find any supreme quality saint artifacts, Jianchen thought. He found it to be rather regretful. After thinking this, he activated the defensive formations in the room. As Jianchen refined the startling rainbow sword, Yang Tai also hurried back to the True Sword Pavilion with his group of people from the Yang family. Not only were there several deities in the group, but there was even a god elder. The True Sword Pavilion did not dare to give the furious people of the Yang family the cold shoulder. The manager himself appeared and received Yang Tai with a smile. Young Master Yang, unfortunately, you've come a little late. The person you're looking for has already left. They're not in our True Sword Pavilion. I will obviously search the entire city for that person. But there was a lady in your True Sword Pavilion who worked with him. I have to take her away, Yang Tai said coldly. He did not dare to barge in with the manager standing at the door. Apologies, young Master Yang. She just sold a high-quality saint artifact, making a great contribution to our business. As a result, she has been promoted to assistant manager. You can't take her away, the manager of the True Sword Pavilion replied politely. What? She sold a high-quality saint artifact? Did that person really buy a high-quality saint artifact? Yang Tai was surprised inside, but he revealed a huge grin on his face soon after. Young master, since that person can purchase a high-quality saint artifact, he must have quite an impressive background. He might even be from a clan with an overgod. You can't act recklessly in regards to this matter. You can't offend such a powerful clan over something as petty as this. The elder of the Yang family said from beside Yang Tai. No. This matter relates to the pride and dignity of our Yang family. How can we just let the matter end like this? I have to find this person, Yang Tai said coldly. Joy filled his eyes as he sniggered. Though if he's willing to hand over the high-quality saint artifact, I'll forget this ever happened. Chapter 1827. Knocking on the door. This person paid a huge price to obtain that high-quality saint artifact. He must be treating it like a treasure. Taking it from him probably won't be an easy feat, the god from the Yang family said. He frowned slightly as he sensed an ill omen in regards to Yang Tai's intentions. Before Yang Tai could follow up, the elder continued. Moreover, this person definitely isn't simple since he possesses such great wealth. Since he's bold enough to buy a high-quality saint artifact, he might actually possess the strength to protect it and prevent himself from being robbed right after the purchase. As a result, I can conclude that this person is either very powerful, or he comes from a clan or organization with an overgod. I just wonder which clan he is from. Young master, high-quality saint artifacts are valuable, but it's just not a smart choice to offend a clan with an overgod over something like this. The elder of the Yang family analyzed sternly. He did all that he could to persuade Yang Tai to not make trouble with Jianqin. This was because he understood that the only people who were bold enough to buy a high-quality saint artifact before the eyes of the public either suffered from mental issues or possessed great confidence. The elder directly ignored the possibility of the person being a powerful expert, because 6 million high-grade divine crystals was not something that any person could take out, particularly without the backing of a powerful clan. However, Yang Tai paid no attention to the elder's attempts at persuasion at all. He insisted on the same thing, speaking arrogantly. I don't know whether that person is from a clan with an overgod. You're only guessing as well. What if you've guessed incorrectly and that person not only lacks any particular background, but he lacks strength as well? That he was just lucky, finding the dwelling of a person somewhere, and receiving some treasures and wealth from there? Moreover, the brat severed the arms of my guards in such a fearless manner. My Yang family is a large clan within the divine kingdom of Pingtian after all. I have to redeem us. So what if he comes from a clan with an overgod? We're the Yang family, don't forget. Yang Tai could not help but become proud when he mentioned the Yang family. The Yang family really did possess an extremely great status in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, due to the existence of their ancestor. All the clans with overgods in the divine kingdom possessed some fear towards the Yang family. This was all because the ancestor of the clan was a late overgod, possessing status only second to the divine king, and the grand imperial protector. Afterwards, Yang Tai immediately passed down orders to search for Jianqin. With the power of the Yang family in the royal capital, finding a person was naturally nothing difficult. They found the inn where Jianqin had settled down in temporarily very soon. The entire room on the highest floor of the Perched Phoenix Inn, labeled Heaven, was covered by a formation. Jianqin currently sat on the bed in that room as he refined the startling rainbow sword. He did not even consider that the young master of the Yang family might become interested in the saint artifact he had just purchased. However, even if he knew, he would not feel afraid at all. The ancestor of the Yang family, Yang Kai, was very powerful, having reached late overgod. However, he had also reached late overgod in terms of comprehension. All he lacked was cultivation. As a result, there was no reason for him to fear Yang Kai of the Yang family. At this moment, Yang Tai had already surrounded the Perched Phoenix Inn with over 100 experts from the Yang family. Not only were there many deities among them, but Yang Tai had even managed to bring a few god elders. Although Yang Tai's status as the young master would have never been enough to directly order the elders around, he still deserved some respect as a young master. Not to mention the fact that this matter was connected to a high-quality saint artifact. If they really could hand a high-quality saint artifact to their ancestor, it would be a matter of merit, and they would be rewarded handsomely. In regards to any problems that could be created, just how many people were willing to offend the Yang family with their current status? The person who bought the high-quality saint artifact severed the limbs of our guards. It was he who caused trouble first. We have a reason to make trouble. It's completely reasonable for us to take his high-quality saint artifact, one of the elders who hurried over later said seriously. Even though I haven't personally seen the overgods of the neighboring divine kingdoms, I have heard of them, so I possess some understanding towards them. There's only the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan that I don't really know, since he has only broken through recently. However, there's no one who matches the person who bought the high-quality saint artifact amongst all the overgods I know. As a result, I'm certain that this person isn't an overgod. Even if he's a god, he probably isn't from our kingdom because I basically possess information on all the gods in our kingdom, said a middle-aged man. He wore white robes and seemed like a scholar. Yang Tai immediately became overjoyed when he heard these words from the elder. He said, "Elders, let's go and find that person right now." The elders of the Yang family nodded happily and followed Yang Tai directly into the inn. Only the elder who tried to persuade Yang Tai earlier sensed that something was off, but now that the situation had developed to this point, he had run out of choices. He could only sigh to himself and follow them into the inn. As one of the most luxurious inns in the royal capital, the Perched Phoenix Inn naturally possessed some background. However, when the manager saw that these people were elders of the Yang family, he could only turn a blind eye. He did not dare to speak up. Even though the inn was the business of a clan with an overgod in the royal capital, there was nothing he could do. There really were very few people who dared to offend the Yang family, particularly over small matters like this. It's here. That person is staying here. Yang Tai brought the elders before Jian Chen's room, and his voice was filled with some excitement. Without any hesitation, he immediately touched the formation. Jian Chen sat within the room with his eyes closed as the startling rainbow sword shone with resplendent light. As the sword hovered before him, it emitted the invisible, sharp sword qi of a high-quality saint artifact, filling the entire room. However, at this moment, the light that had always surrounded the sword suddenly vanished, revealing the sword itself. It was also at this moment that Jian Chen opened his eyes slowly. He stared at the startling rainbow sword before him calmly. After studying it closely, he could not help but show a sliver of delight. He murmured, "You'll be accompanying me in the future, startling rainbow sword." As he said that, Jian Chen's right hand touched the sword. At that moment, the sword just vanished all of a sudden, disappearing into Jian Chen's body. Suddenly, a ripple appeared in the defensive formation outside the room. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. As soon as he put the sword away, he turned towards the entrance. His plain eyes gradually sharpened. Chapter 1828. A slight punishment. Not only could the formation for Jian Chen's room defend attacks from even gods, but it also functioned as a barrier that blocked sight and the senses of the soul. However, this only applied to those outside the formation. Inside, Jian Chen did not suffer these restrictions, so he could clearly observe what was going on outside through the formation. Looks like this little young master of the Yang family harbors resentment towards me from when I severed the arms of his guards. He actually directly brought 4 gods from his clan. Even in clans with overgods, gods possess quite some status. They're usually elders and stand above everyone else, receiving the respect of everybody. Yang Tai only suffered a slight embarrassment in the True Sword Pavilion, and he immediately brought 4 gods with him. Looks like they haven't come with good intentions. They probably want to redeem themselves. Are the people of the Yang family really so stubborn over such a worthless matter, where they are willing to send over so many people for just a wastrel? Jian Chen thought. He had seen the ancestor of the Yang family, Yang Kai, in God King Duanmu's dwelling in the past. He was a very powerful overgod, having reached late overgod. He was one of the most powerful people among the several dozen overgods who entered the dwelling previously. Although he was not on any particularly good terms with Yang Kai, he was not on any particularly bad terms either. As a result, he was rather unwilling to fall out with him over these petty matters. The Yang family was one of the greatest clans in the divine kingdom of Pingtian after all. It was a clan that stood in the same divine kingdom as his Tianyuan clan. For the Tianyuan clan, he was naturally unwilling to offend other clans with overgods for no reason, as it would lead to troubles for the clan. After all, it was impossible for him to remain in the Tianyuan clan forever. He would leave one day. Of course, it was a whole new story if they came to provoke him time and time again. Jian Chen was unwilling to create trouble for the Tianyuan clan, but he was not someone who feared matters like that. He would face these problems head-on when they came. With a wave of his hand, Jian Chen opened the defensive formation around the room. As soon as the formation was removed, the people from the Yang family learnt of it. They all beamed with joy, appearing to be extremely excited. It was as if they could already see a high-quality saint artifact before them. Yang Tai and the god elders immediately entered the room, while the deities stood guard outside. Among the 4 elders, one of them closed the door behind him as soon as he stepped in. However, he felt that this still was not enough, so he immediately cast down a formation around the room. Only after that did the elders nod in satisfaction. They felt like the operation this time could not fail. The high-quality saint artifact was basically theirs. Jian Chen Kami remained on his bed for the entire time. He watched everything unfold nonchalantly. However, his cold gaze explained what he currently felt. He felt nowhere near as calm as he appeared on the surface. They behaved so cautiously and came with ill intent. They definitely came for his sword. Fortunately, it was Jian Chen who sat there today. He felt no fear towards the Yang family. If it were another person who was not an overgod, the outcome would be as clear as glass. Brat, I never thought that we'd see each other so soon. Yang Tai glared at the seated Jian Chun as he sneered. Jian Chun directly ignored Yang Tai. He glanced past the gods of the Yang family and asked calmly, "You must have come for the high-quality saint artifact, right?" Seeing how Jian Chun did not even look at him, Yang Tai immediately became furious as he always placed great focus on his status. Before the elders could say anything, he directly called out coldly, "Brat, this is what you get for offending me. That's right, we've come this time for the startling rainbow sword, and it won't be just the sword this time. We'll be taking you with us as well." Jian Chun immediately frowned. However, the elders silently studied Jian Chun, and they gradually became stern as well, as all of them had discovered that they could not see through his strength. In their eyes, Jian Chun seemed just like an ordinary person, without the presence of an expert at all. There were normally two situations that would lead to this. The first one was that the person possessed a great secret technique that could conceal their presence. As a result, gods or even overgods could not see through the cultivation of a deity. The other situation was that the difference in cultivation was simply far too great. All they needed to do was conceal their presence, and other people would not be able to sense it. The elders of the Yang family all studied Jian Chun for a while before reaching the same conclusion. This person definitely is not an overgod. If he were an overgod, he would possess the pride of one. He probably would have sent us out of the room already, but he has only remained there without doing anything at all. It is probably because he fears us. This person must be a god who concealed his presence using a secret technique. He might even be a deity. Has the Yang family reached such a level of boldness in the royal capital? Have they already achieved dominance in the royal capital? Jian Chun murmured to himself. However, Yang Tai's face changed when he heard Jian Chun's words. Yang Tai could not help but think about an awful memory of the past, and his face immediately sunk heavily. He lost his temper and roared out, "You're looking to die." Yang Tai directly swung his hand towards Jian Chun's face. He had completely no idea just whose face he was trying to slap right now. Even the ancestor of the Yang family, Yang Kai, would never be bold enough to do something like this. This was because his action would create an irreconcilable grievance out of nowhere. It was one that would last until death. Jian Chun's gaze turned cold. He caught Yang Tai's hand easily and stared at him coldly. He said, "You sure are bold. Just this one action tempts me to claim your life. But I'll spare you because of your great-grandfather. You may have avoided death, but you still need to be punished." With a flash of light, Jian Chun severed Yang Tai's entire arm. Blood immediately began to spurt out like a fountain. Afterwards, Jian Chun pressed his hand against Yang Tai gently. With a miserable shriek, Yang Tai vomited blood and was sent flying out the window. A gleam of light flickered through the eyes of the elder, who cast down the barrier. Immediately, a crack appeared and Yang Tai just happened to fly out through the crack. The elders did not stop this from happening. They had no good impression of Yang Tai, and his injuries would benefit them greatly instead. It would provide them with an even better excuses to move against Jian Chun. Once they brought the high-quality saint artifact back to the clan, even if the overgod behind this person came, they could use Yang Tai as an excuse for everything they did and avoid trouble. They also witnessed that Jian Chun was only a god at most through his moves this time as well, so they all became fearless. Yang Tai's miserable cries rang out from the street below while his blood had already formed a mess on the ground. It was very rare for people to get injured in the royal capital. In a short moment, Yang Tai's miserable cries had drawn over all the passers-by in the surroundings. Very soon, a large group of people gathered. They all pointed at Yang Tai, who was rolling in pain on the ground, and discussed softly, Isn't that the young master of the Yang family, Yang Tai? How has he ended up like that? Who is it that is bold enough to cut off the young master of the Yang family's arm? It doesn't matter who the person in the perched phoenix inn is, they're in deep trouble. He deserves it. Who knows just how many innocent girls lost their lives due to the young master of the Yang family. Now that he has ended up like this, he really does deserve all of it. The guards of the royal capital will arrive very soon. Yang Tai really is annoying sometimes. There really isn't a reason to blame you, except for the fact that he's the young master of the Yang family, after all. For the sake of the Yang family's dignity, we can't just drop this matter here. If the matter causes a large ruckus and attracts the attention of the ancestor, it'll be horrible. In the entire Divine Kingdom, there's probably no one, apart from the commander of the Royal Divine Army, Xiando, and the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan from the Dong'an province, who can endure his anger. The barrier closed up again and isolated any sounds in the room. The god who had cast down the formation smiled as he continued to speak, acting like he was completely concerned for Jianchen. However, I think we can become friends fast. Seeing how you've fallen under so much trouble, I'm willing to assist you in getting through it all. I just hope that you can cooperate. Chapter 1829. Jianchen's bottom line. Jianchen sneered when he heard the elder's words. He stared at the elder as if he was deep in thought and calmly said, "May I ask what this old mister is speaking of exactly by cooperating?" The old man was extremely experienced in life. Naturally, he noticed the faint sarcasm in Jianchen's voice, but he did not mind at all. He smiled. "It's nothing difficult for you. All you need to do is hand over the high-quality saint artifact, the startling rainbow sword. You just purchased from the True Sword Pavilion. Only that will be enough for you to make up for your mistake of cutting off the young master's arm. Of course, I understand that you've paid quite a hefty price to buy the saint artifact. However, you have to understand just who you've offended this time. It's the young master of the Yang family. As a powerful clan within the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian, the Yang family naturally places much emphasis on their pride. As a matter of fact, they cannot allow any provocation to happen at all, and your actions today have gone far beyond mere provocation. If this matter isn't handled correctly, you'll become an enemy of the Yang family. Not only will you struggle to escape from the royal capital, but even the clan behind you will be dragged into the matter. Let alone the fact that no one dares to provoke the Yang family in the Divine Kingdom. We're famed even across the neighboring Divine Kingdoms." The old man smiled. As soon as he mentioned the possibility of becoming an enemy of the Yang family, he felt like victory was already in reach. He believed Jianchen was done for. The Yang family really did possess such prestige and power. And this was all because of their late overgod ancestor, Yang Kai. I never thought that the glorious Yang family of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian would do something like this. But do you really think I would just hand over the sword I spent 6 million high-grade divine crystals to purchase? Jianchen asked. The old man smiled confidently, and his tone gradually became forceful as well. "Brother, you've offended the Yang family, so you must hand over the sword. Otherwise, the Yang family will not let you leave the city." Elder Ma is right. "Sir, it's best if you hand over the startling rainbow sword. We'll be able to guarantee you that the Yang family won't look into the matter of the young master's severed arm. Otherwise, we'll just have to make it difficult for you and make you come with us to the Yang family." A second elder spoke out. He was also an old man, and he looked at Jianchen with hostility. "High-quality saint artifacts are precious, but if you can't even keep your life intact, is there still any use for such a great weapon? Brother, you better think it through. After all, the Yang family is not to be trifled with. Even if you don't care for your life, you have to think about your clan. If you happen to anger the Yang family, and they directly wipe out your clan, it'll be horrible." The scholarly middle-aged man chimed in as well. He smiled and spoke calmly. However, there was a sense of coldness present in his voice. Only the last elder from the Yang family remained silent. He was the one who had followed Yang Kai to the True Sword Pavilion, and tried to persuade him otherwise. His old eyes always remained fixed on Jianchen. He felt that the person before him was nowhere as simple as the other elders believed him to be. "Wipe out my clan," Jianchen murmured, and his face gradually sank. Killing intent began to seep out from his eyes, and he did not make any effort to conceal it at all. If the three elders had only threatened Jianchen himself, he would have never reacted so violently. However, they never, ever should have threatened his clan. Not only were members of his family in his clan, but there were also his friends that he had gone through life and death with. They were Jianchen's soft spot, as well as a bottom line that could not be crossed. Sensing the icy-cold killing intent from Jianchen, the four elders in the room looked at each other, and they all became extremely stern. The killing intent had actually made them shiver. Through the killing intent, the four of them gained a rough understanding of Jianchen's strength. He was definitely more powerful than any single one of them. At this moment, Jianchen moved. The bed that he sat on shook gently, while he had already become a faint blur. He appeared before the scholarly, middle-aged man with unbelievable speed, and directly grabbed his throat in a death grip. Only after sensing his throat being gripped tightly did the man see Jianchen appear before him. His eyes widened dramatically while disbelief flooded his eyes. His heart churned. With his strength as a god, he was actually unable to put up a struggle against Jianchen at all. He did not even see Jianchen move. All he felt was that in a single instance, his throat had ended up in Jianchen's grip. Who is this? Even I failed to sense anything when he moved. Even late gods can't achieve this. Is he an overgod? How is that possible? How can he be an overgod? The middle-aged man was utterly terrified. You dare to threaten to end my clan? Let alone you, a god. Even if your ancestor, Yang Kai, was standing before me, I would never let the matter slide. Jianchen glared at the middle-aged man as he forced out each word before directly smacking the man's head with his hand. The clan was Jianchen's bottom line. It was an existence that could not be touched. Even though he was not interested in becoming an enemy of the Yang family before, he needed to kill this person now because of how he had spoken. Bang! The middle-aged man's head directly shattered into pieces from Jianchen's attack, and his soul was wiped out. Jianchen released his hand from the man's throat and allowed him to collapse onto the ground. Afterwards, he turned his head towards the three other elders as if nothing had happened at all. He said emotionlessly, "Now not only have I severed the young master's arm, but I've killed an elder of your Yang family. What are you going to do?" Chapter 1830. Guards of the royal capital. The three other elders collectively paled. They stared at Jianchen in complete fear and disbelief as they staggered backwards uncontrollably. Jianchen had moved far too quickly. Not only was he quick, but he had slain a god so easily as well. From just a single clash, an elder who was roughly as strong as them had died just like that before them. Let alone fighting back, he failed to even put up a struggle. He was truly as weak as an ant. The three remaining elders of the Yang family were not exactly stupid. Jianchen was definitely not a god since he could kill someone around the same strength as them in such a quick manner. Even late gods would not be able to kill one of their companions so easily in front of the three of them. They would have plenty of time to interfere and save them. Why, you're an overgod. An elder stared at Jianchen in terror as he said with a trembling voice. At that moment, he could only be described as drowned in fear. There was also some disbelief on his face. Although they had never seen all the overgods in the surrounding divine kingdoms, they had heard a few rumors about each person at the very least, so they naturally possessed some information about the nearby overgods. Although they would not be able to identify who the overgod was with a single glance, they could deduct their identity through various traces and unique characteristics. However, they failed to find anything that matched with an overgod they knew from Jianchen. It's no longer important whether I'm a god or an overgod. What is important is that I've killed an elder of your Yang family. Moreover, I clearly heard you mention that the Yang family was a very prideful clan. So haven't I basically slapped the Yang family in the face? How does the Yang family plan on redeeming themselves? Do you still plan on getting me to hand over my newly purchased sword? Or do you plan on making me stay here forever? Jianchen sneered. He no longer had any positive impressions towards the Yang family after all that had happened. Although this was all caused by the elders acting on their own accord, and was not really related to Yang Kai, the behavior of his clansmen was more than enough to let Jianchen understand how Yang Kai was like as a person. If Yang Kai was a righteous person, his clansmen would never do something like this under his influence. No. Senior, this is all a misunderstanding. A complete misunderstanding. We didn't know that it was Senior who had paid a visit to the royal capital. So if we've offended you, we hope that Senior can be the bigger man and forgive the reckless actions of us juniors. We were ignorant and failed to recognize Senior. Yeah. It's all a misunderstanding. We hope that Senior can be the bigger person and spare us juniors. Elder Lu had it coming, which was why he died. It's no one else's fault. Our young family would never stand up for someone like him. The 3 remaining elders all shivered inside as they stared at Jian Chen's murderous gaze. They immediately lowered themselves and begged for mercy and fear. They seemed to be extremely sincere. They were unable to control whether the Yang family would look for trouble due to the death of an elder, nor could they interfere with the matter. However, they did know that they would probably end up just like Elder Lu if they did not act like this right now. The matter at hand was saving their own lives first. Jian Chen glared at the 3 elders. He said nothing as he sank into his thoughts. The 3 elders fell into utter silence as Jian Chen pondered. They even stifled their breaths. They stood there obediently, not daring to act recklessly. They understood that everything they did before an overgod would be futile. It would not be able to evade their senses. Right now, they could only hope that the overgod feared the ancestor of the Yang family, and was not willing to fall out with the Yang family completely. A while later, Jian Chen kicked Elder Lu's corpse suddenly. He said, "I'll spare your lives today. Piss off with your companion's body." "Thank you, Senior." Spared, the 3 elders caught the corpse and flew out the window as if they had just avoided death. They moved as quickly as possible. With just a flash, all 3 of them had vanished. It was very difficult to see them moving about in the streets below. At the same time, the Yang family people who had surrounded the inn below received secret messages from the 3 elders. They all dispersed the encirclement with some confusion and surprise, leaving with the disheveled young master who was missing an arm. All the people of the Yang family had retreated. They're going? The people of the Yang family are just going like this? It's impossible for the matter to just end like this, right? It's impossible. The Yang family is one of the most powerful clans in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Any person who offends them will always suffer in the end. I think I saw people fly out of the window earlier. It was just that they moved too quickly, so I failed to see it clearly. Has the person who injured the young master already been taken away by the elders? That's very likely. That person probably will suffer from the consequences of offending the Yang family. Sai, looks like that is another soul lost from this world. The cultivators who had gathered on the streets all sighed emotionally. Many of them showed much sympathy, as well as anger and deep helplessness. At this moment, there was actually no one who took joy in the matter, surprisingly. Clearly, the Yang family was not well respected by many people, even though they were one of the most powerful clans in the kingdom. The guards are coming. Everyone give way. At this moment, a call rang out, and the expressions of all the cultivators present immediately changed. Without any hesitation, they stepped to one side and formed a path without any further instruction. A group of armored soldiers on a magical beast rushed over from the distance. Their faces were all cold, and their gazes were sharp. Who has been causing trouble here? The captain of the guards gazed around and said heavily, "Sir, the young master of the Yang family brought a few elders from the Yang family to take someone away." A young man in the crowd reported everything he knew with a smile. However, when the captain heard that Yang Tai's arm had been chopped off by someone, his face changed immediately. He said furiously, "What did you say? Yang Tai's arm was chopped off. By who? Who is bold enough to commit such heinous deeds in the royal capital?" The guard was extremely furious, as one of Yang Tai's female cousins was his wife. "Sir, the people of the Yang family have already retreated. They've probably captured the person already." The young man said carefully, Even if he has been taken away, I won't forgive him. Come, let's look into the matter and see if we can deduce his identity and background from any remaining traces," the captain said coldly. With a wave of his hand, he immediately brought some of his trusted subordinates into the inn. Jian Chen remained in the same room. As the room's defensive formation had not been reactivated, the captain directly barged through the door in a reckless and brutal manner. However, as soon as the captain entered the room, and was about to look for any traces left behind, he was stunned. Soon afterwards, a gleam of light flashed through his eyes. and he stared at a man in white clothes who stood before the window with his back towards him. "Who are you?" the captain demanded. "I'm that person bold enough to commit such heinous deeds in the royal capital." Jianchen stared outside as he said calmly. Chapter 1831. The Royal Divine Army mobilized. What? That person is you? Doesn't that mean that you also cut off Yang Tai's arm? The captain stared at Jianchen in shock. Disbelief flooded his face as he was completely taken aback. Did the elders of the Yang family not take away the person who offended the Yang family and cut off Yang Tai's arm? How could he still be here? Even if the elders of the Yang family did not take away the person who had chopped off Yang Tai's arm yet, just where had the elders run off to? Why did they leave the person behind and return all by themselves? Even if he ignored just how unbelievable the outcome was, it was impossible for the Yang family to do such an embarrassing thing with their strength and prestige. If the matter made it out to the public, the Yang family's status would probably plummet in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. It could even affect their status in the surrounding divine kingdoms. As a captain of the guards for the royal capital, you should enforce the laws impartially. Shouldn't you at least ask about how everything happened in the first place after getting here, and not focus on Yang Tai's arm? Don't tell me that as a captain of the guards, you're connected to the Yang family, and you want to take advantage of your position so things work in the Yang family's favor? Jianchen said calmly. He had not shifted his gaze from beyond the window. He stared in the direction of the royal palace of the kingdom. Just then, he had discovered someone sending over the senses of their soul in an extremely well-hidden manner. Although the senses had been purposefully concealed, Jianchen still discovered it. He only found it to be extremely unclear and hazy. Clearly, his current strength was not enough to clearly pinpoint where it had settled. However, even though he had only captured it vaguely, Jianchen could feel a mountainous pressure from it. Even with his current strength, he could not help but shiver. God King, Jianchen thought. The God Kings of the Divine Kingdom had already begun paying attention to here. The Divine Kingdom of Pingtian has 2 God Kings. I wonder if the senses of the soul I just discovered belongs to the Divine King His Majesty, or the Grand Imperial Protector, Jianchen wondered. The Divine King reached God King many years ago. It said that before the Divine Kingdom had even been founded, the Divine King Pingtian was already a God King. He personally led his subordinates to create this divine kingdom. Now that the divine kingdom has already existed for several hundreds of thousands of years, the divine king must have made quite a lot of progress compared to before. On the other hand, the Grand Imperial Protector has only reached God King recently. It's said that he only broke through a little over 100,000 years ago. The divine king's strength must be greater than the Grand Imperial Protector. I won't be able to sense the Divine King's senses of the soul as a result, so it should have been the Grand Imperial Protectors. Jianchen stood before the window with his back towards the captain of the guards. He gazed in the direction of the royal palace as he pondered deeply. He completely did not notice that the captain's face had become abnormally ugly when he mentioned that the captain might be abusing his position. His face basically sunk completely and killing intent filled his eyes. The laws within the divine kingdom of Pingtian were particularly strict. As a captain of the guards, he was loyal to the divine king, but he still helped the Yang family do many things in secret. As a result, the thing he feared the most was other people mentioning that he was abusing his position of power. Clearly, Jianchen's words had completely infuriated the captain. I will naturally find out exactly what transpired. However, there's no hope denying that you cut off Yang Tai's arm. You dare commit crimes so openly in the royal capital. Come take him away, the captain said coldly. Yes, captain. Immediately, a few guards charged into the room to take Jianchen away. At this moment, a thunderous series of galloping sounds rang out, causing the ground to tremble gently. What is happening? The captain and his guards all looked at each other from the sudden disruption. The guards who wanted to take Jianchen away stopped as they became uncertain. The disruption was simply far too great, and it was like an entire army was moving about. The earth seemed to be shaking from the deafening gallops. 2 of you stay here to watch over him. The others come with me to see what's happening, the guard said coldly. He immediately stopped paying any more attention to Jianchen, and left with his trusted subordinates. However, when the captain left the inn and saw what was happening in the distance, he became completely stunned. In the distance, a squad of elite, armored soldiers shot over. They moved extremely quickly as if they were lightning. From the distance, they seemed to have been reduced to a string of blurs. The soldiers were all actually at godhood. The mounts beneath them were 3 flame divine horses that burned with red flames. 3 flame divine horses were relatively common beasts in the saints' world. They seemed like horses, but they were 3 times larger and were naturally accompanied by flames. They were called 3-flamed, because the flames of the mount could change 3 times in a single lifetime. Newly born, they would possess strength at sainthood, and their flames would be scarlet. Once they reached adulthood, their strength would be on par with deities, and their flames would become blood red. If they were nurtured with a vast quantity of heavenly resources, the horses could even become gods. Once they became gods, their flames would burn a deep violet. That would be the final stage of cultivation for the horses. Throughout history, there had never been a 3-flame divine horse that had reached over God. However, these divine horses would become the mounts of the very best due to their strength. Once they were tamed, they would remain loyal for the rest of their lives, and they were naturally skilled at teamwork. The horses beneath these soldiers all possessed blood-red flames. Clearly, they had all reached adulthood, and they possessed the battle prowess of a deity. It's the Royal Divine Army. Oh my God, it's actually the Royal Divine Army. Am I dreaming? The Royal Divine Army has actually come. Looking at the direction they're heading in, the Royal Divine Army seem to be going to the Perched Phoenix Inn. Has something happened there, which is why they're going that way? The conflicts within the royal capital have always been handled by the regular guards. Why would the Royal Divine Army deal with these miscellaneous matters? They are lofty existences, and they are the strongest and most terrifying army of the entire divine kingdom. They're known to be the protector gods of the kingdom. On the streets, countless people watched on. All of their eyes were filled with respect, and quite a few of them were filled with eagerness. The Royal Divine Army was a group of soldiers that was almost divine in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. They possessed crushing strength. In the entire region, there were no armies from any divine kingdom that could match up to the Royal Divine Army. Why has the Royal Divine Army come? The captain of the guards watched everything unfold in disbelief. The Royal Divine Army was rarely ever mobilized. Chapter 1832. 10,000 men. Commander Peng, the captain of the guards, watched as the Royal Divine Army galloped towards him in a stunning manner as he directly pondered to himself. The army seems to be heading for the inn. Strange, why has the Royal Divine Army suddenly shown up here when they're rarely mobilized at all? Has the matter of Yang Tai's severed arm alarmed the Royal Divine Army? And before, I clearly heard that there were a few elders from the Yang family who came here. It's impossible for them to allow something like this to happen with the Yang family's pride and strength. Yet they actually left quietly in the end. They did not even bother with the person who offended them. Looks like the Yang family retreated because they received the news that the Royal Divine Army was coming. That's why the person who chopped off Yang Tai's arm is completely fine. The captain could not help but nod to himself secretly when he thought up to there. He found his thoughts to be more and more believable. The real reason why the Yang family had retreated was very likely due to the fact that they learnt that the Royal Divine Army was coming to take away the person instead, so they decided to not get in their way. Although the Yang family was one of the most powerful clans in the Divine Kingdom, they were nowhere near close to reigning supreme in the royal capital. Although there were basically no clans who dared to stand up to the Yang family, the Royal Divine Army was an exception. Even when ignoring the fact that the person behind the army was the Divine King, just the strength of the army by itself was no weaker than the Yang family. At the same time, the Royal Divine Army also possessed a late over god as their commander. If someone asked whether there was anyone who could stand up to the Yang family in the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian, the Royal Divine Army would definitely be one of the answers. However, the captain of the guard shook his head again after some thought. No, the Royal Divine Army and the Yang family have no connections at all. Why would they stand up for the Yang family just because the young master's arm was cut off? What is this all about? Is this really not as complicated as I imagined it to be? And the Royal Divine Army is just passing by? The gallops of the horses rang louder and louder, clearer and clearer up ahead. Clearly, only around 100 people had come, but it created the same disturbance as an entire army of soldiers. Most importantly, all their movements were completely in sync. As a result, every time the hooves of the horses struck the ground, it was thunderous, causing the ground to shake. The group of soldiers from the Royal Divine Army rapidly approached the inn under the gazes of everyone. Everyone on the streets stuck close to the buildings. All of them had even stepped aside to broaden the path without any warning, so that the Royal Divine Army could pass through. Even the captain of the guard stood to one side obediently. He could put on airs normally, but before the Royal Divine Army, he could only stand down obediently. He was no longer bold enough to order people around. The Royal Divine Guards were on a whole different level compared to his guards. However, just when the captain of the guards believed that the Royal Divine Army was simply passing by, the entire squadron unexpectedly pulled on their reins in a single motion together. All the 3 flame divine horses immediately raised their front legs. Coupled with a deafening screech, their hooves struck the ground heavily, producing a thunder-like boom. Immediately, a shockwave visible to the naked eye rapidly expanded in all directions due to the hooves. It shook up all the bystanders, making them stagger. Many of them even lost their footing and fell over. If it were not for the fact that the ground and the entire city was enveloped and protected by a powerful formation, just the stamp from the horses would have been enough to reduce the surrounding structures to ruins. After all, there were over 100 adult 3-flame divine horses, which was equivalent to over 100 deities. Ruru, the same person that Jianchen had seen in the True Sword Pavilion, currently stood with a few guards in the crowd. She stared at the squadron of 3-flame divine horses that stood in a neat formation outside the perched phoenix in doubt. Strange. Why has the Royal Divine Army come? Ruru wondered softly. Young miss, I heard that Yang Tai's arm was cut off by someone in the perched phoenix inn. Maybe the Royal Divine Army came for that. A guard said from behind Ruru. Her voice was crisp and pleasant, making it very evident that she was female. It was easy to assume that her appearance would match her voice. Moreover, looking at the statures of the other guards, they all seemed feminine as well. Young miss, in my opinion, the person who cut off Yang Tai's arm seems to be the young man who purchased the startling rainbow sword in the True Sword Pavilion. However, isn't he just a little too bold? He has offended the Yang family, added another guard. Young miss, the young man certainly did act rather viciously, but he also possesses a sense of righteousness. I am not powerful, but I have seen countless people in the world. If I am correct, that young man should be an honorable person, or he would not possess such a bearing. Young miss, let's help this person out. After all, it was all caused by Yang Tai, said another guard. She seemed to be pleading Ruru. Ruru remained silent. She just stared at the inn. The person at the very front of the squadron from the Royal Divine Army dismounted. He was wearing deep red armor. He said to the people behind him, 1,000-man Commander Liu, 1,000-man Commander Cho, come with me. The rest of you remain in position. Yes, sir, the squadron replied. Listening to the familiar voice of the squadron captain, the eyes of the captain of the guards immediately widened. Disbelief filled his eyes as he thought. Aye, isn't that Sir 10,000-man Commander Peng's voice? How is that possible? Sir 10,000-man Commander Peng has personally come, and there are 2,000-man commanders as well? Why has Sir 10,000-man Commander come with 2,000-man commanders? Although very shocked and doubtful, the captain of the guards dared not to tarry. He immediately ran up like a suck-up, and arrived before 10,000-man Commander Peng, who was covered in armor apart from his 2 eyes. The captain of the guard smiled as he fawned over 10,000-man Commander Peng, lowering himself very much and speaking extremely politely. He knew extremely well that although he was the captain of a squadron of guards in the royal capital, it was nothing before a 10,000-man commander of the Royal Divine Guards. Not to mention that the 10,000-man commander of all people was 10,000-man Commander Peng. However, 10,000-man Commander Peng paid no attention to the captain of the guards. After glancing coldly at him, he entered the perched phoenix inn with his 2,000-man commanders. The captain did not become angered at all. He smiled resplendently as he glanced at the remaining squadron of the Royal Divine Army with eagerness and envy. Afterwards, he ran off behind 10,000-man Commander Peng again. Young miss, the Royal Divine Army has already gone in to capture the person. And it seems like the person leading the squadron is 10,000-man Commander Peng. He's known to be the strongest beneath Overgod in the entire Divine Kingdom. There are even rumors that 10,000-man Commander Peng has the right to make it onto the god's pedestal. It's impossible for that person to be his enemy. The guard who had asked Ruru to save Jianchen before spoke out again. Young miss, why don't we help him out? I don't think he's a bad person either. Moreover, we were slightly mistaken about him in the True Sword Pavilion as well. We thought that he had only mentioned that he wanted to buy a supreme quality saint artifact or a high quality saint artifact to attract your attention. But we never thought he would actually buy one, added another guard. She also seemed to be reluctant about Jianchen getting taken away by the Royal Divine Army. Once he was taken away by the Royal Divine Army, he would suffer even if he came from an organization that possessed an overgod. Under the persuasion of the guards, Ruru finally let out a sigh and said, "All right, let's go in and have a look." Chapter 1833. Ruru made her way towards the inn gently. She moved at a steady pace while her guards all followed behind her closely. There were 2 armored members of the Royal Divine Army guarding the entrance to the Perched Phoenix Inn right now. They stood straight like statues without moving at all. Only their eyes were revealed, which shone with a cold and merciless light as they observed the surroundings. Clearly, they were there to prevent anyone from entering. The guards under the captain had stood to one side long ago. Ruru directly made her way towards the entrance of the inn with her guards. Even though there were 2 soldiers at the entrance, she did not show any signs of hesitation in her steps at all. She was completely at ease. Just as Ruru was about to enter the inn, the 2 soldiers did not do anything to stop her. Instead, they bowed at the same time and said to Ruru together, "Greetings, young miss." The jaws of everyone in the surroundings immediately dropped at the sight of this. All of their eyes became filled with shock and disbelief towards Ruru, leading to quite a large disturbance. They all soon began to guess at Ruru's identity when they saw how the Royal Divine Army showed so much respect towards her. Clearly, Ruru was already used to the polite treatment she received from the 2 soldiers. She did not find it strange at all. She nodded at the 2 of them calmly, and did not halt her steps at all. She directly entered the inn. At the same time, Jianchen resided on the very top floor of the inn. He remained by the window as he gazed out. He seemed to be deep in thought. Behind him, 10,000-man Commander Peng and his 2,000-man commanders had already arrived in the room. When the 10,000-man commander saw Jianchen's back, he immediately clasped his fist towards Jianchen without any hesitation and said loudly, 10,000-man Commander Peng of the 7th Regiment of the Royal Divine Army greets the Patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. 1,000-man Commander Zhang of the 7th Regiment of the Royal Divine Army greets the Patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. 1,000-man Commander Li of the 7th Regiment of the Royal Divine Army greets the Patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. At the same time, the 2,000-man commanders behind 10,000-man Commander Peng clasped their hands towards Jianchen. They looked at Jianchen with much respect. This was the respect towards strength. The 3 of them were only gods. In their eyes, overgods were indomitable existences. Moreover, the overgod standing before them was not like any other overgod. Instead, he possessed a crushing advantage in power. He was the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, who defeated the overgod of the Wainer clan, someone that had comprehended the laws of strength. He was Jianchen. Jianchen turned his head towards the 3 soldiers covered in armor and asked, "Did Xiando send you here? Are you really that certain that I'm the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan? What if you recognized the wrong person? Wouldn't it become a huge joke if that happened?" "It was Commander Xiando who sent us. Before we came, the commander showed us images of the patriarch, which is why we recognize you," said Commander Peng Fei. Jianchen nodded. Just when he was about to say something, the door to the room suddenly opened once again. The captain of the guards entered from outside. Clearly, he did not sense the special atmosphere in the room, nor did hear what had just been said earlier. As soon as he saw Jian Chun, coldness filled his eyes. He pointed at Jian Chun and said, "Commander Peng, it's him. He was the one who committed crimes in the royal capital. Not only does he look down on the laws, but he's extremely audacious as well. If you let him go, who knows how many more heinous crimes he will commit. Please take him away for arrest, Commander Peng." Jian Chun smiled when he heard that. He looked at the captain and Commander Peng in interest without saying anything at all. However, when Commander Peng heard the captain's words, his gaze changed slightly. If his covered face was visible at that moment, it would be evident that his face had already darkened, having become extremely sunken. The person before them was the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. The same person who easily defeated Weiner Yan, who had comprehended the laws of strength several dozen years ago. Not to mention that there were rumors recently that the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan had broken through once again in God King Duanmu's dwelling. The patriarch of the Tianyuan clan was someone that even their superior, Xian Dou, had to treat politely. Xian Dou had even ordered them to receive the patriarch warmly. Yet the captain of the guards had demanded his arrest as soon as he showed up. Was he not trying to go against everything that the commanders were trying to carry out? Right now, Peng Fei was tempted to swat the captain to death in a single stroke. Even if you want to take people away, you should find out everything about the matter before taking action. At this moment, Ruru entered the room with her guards as well. Clearly, she had heard the captain's words. She said all that as soon as she had entered the room. "Young miss, why have you come as well?" Peng Fei was rather surprised as he stared at Ruru and said politely. Ruru glanced at the guards behind her, and a sliver of helplessness appeared on her face. She said, "The girls can't bear an innocent person being framed, which is why I came specially to have a look." Ruru paused after reaching this point. She glanced at Jian Chen and said, 10,000 men, Commander Peng. According to my knowledge, the entire matter was instigated by Yang Tai. As a result, I hope that Commander Peng can look through all the facts before making an arrest. I won't allow you to take away the innocent. Arrest? Young miss, aren't you? Commander Peng stared at Ruru. He was clueless as to how to respond. He only grumbled indignantly inside. My young miss, the person before you is the famed patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. Just what position have you forced me into by saying that I would arrest people right before him? Moreover, even if I really wanted to arrest him, I'm nowhere near his opponent as a god. At the very least, we would need an overgod like Commander Xian Dou to come personally. Ruru could not help but become slightly confused when she saw how Commander Peng responded. Something did seem slightly off. Commander Peng, are there any problems? Ruru asked. The captain also looked at Commander Peng. He also sensed that something was off. Jian Chen's interest was piqued as he watched everything unfold like a cliché drama. He smiled at the people in the room. Suddenly, Commander Peng clasped his fist towards Jian Chen. He said apologetically, Patriarch, this is the first young lady of our commander, Xian Ruru. The young miss did not know the Patriarch's identity, so I that hope the Patriarch can forgive her if she has offended you in any way. The captain immediately became stunned when he saw the commander's actions. Disbelief filled his face. He was a mighty 10,000-man commander of the Royal Divine Army, not to mention the fact that he was the famed 10,000-man commander, Peng Fei, yet he was actually apologizing to the young man. Moreover, the reason for his apology was how their young lady had spoken. Just how great was the first young lady of the commander's estate. With her status in the army, very few overgods would ever truly pursue the matter even if she disrespected a few regular overgods. However, Commander Peng was actually personally apologizing to the young man before him due to some minor things raised by Xian Ruru. Just who was this young man? Patriarch? Patriarch? Just which patriarch in our divine kingdom of Pingtian possesses such power? There aren't any. Let alone our divine kingdom. There are no patriarchs as powerful as him even in our neighboring divine kingdoms, because the patriarchs of clans with overgods are always gods or even other deities. However, even when facing the patriarch of the Yang family, Commander Peng would still talk without going out of his way to be respectful. He would not show any fear, let alone lower himself like this. Unless he's from the Dong'an province. No, impossible. The captain guessed. Finally, he seemed to think of who this person was, and his face immediately paled. Xianruru was also slightly taken aback by Commander Peng's apology. However, she also seemed to realize something soon afterwards. A strange light immediately filled her eyes as she stared at Jian Chen. She almost cried out, "You're the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan from the Dong'an province?" According to Xianruru's understanding, only the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan could be referred to as patriarch and make Commander Peng act with so much caution. Overgods were basically all ancestors in clans. They would stand back while the position of patriarch would be occupied by someone else. Only the Tian Yuan clan of the Dong'an province possessed an extremely powerful overgod as a patriarch. Chapter 1834. The Commander's Estate. Young miss, you're right. This is the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, said Commander Peng. As soon as he thought about how their young lady had spoken to Jianchen so eagerly without even knowing his identity, 10,000-man Commander Peng could only smile bitterly inside. Their young lady was normally rather clever, but why had she suddenly lost her touch? Did she not realize from the response and actions of the Royal Divine Army that they had not come to arrest someone? Xianruru immediately became stunned after confirming Jianchen's identity. She stared in disbelief at Jianchen's young face that was filled with a sense of righteousness. She had already considered that Jianchen possessed an extraordinary background, where it was extremely likely that he came from an organization with an overgod. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to possess so many high-grade divine crystals to take out for a high-quality saint artifact. However, she had never considered that the person who had said that they wanted to buy a supreme quality saint artifact, and had even been mistaken by people as someone who was just trying to attract her attention, would be the famous, almost legendary patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, Jian Chun. For a moment, even Xianruru found it rather unbelievable for such a great change in status to occur. The jaws of the guards around Xianruru dropped at that moment as well. Disbelief was plastered across their faces. Compared to Xianruru and everyone else's shock, the captain of the guards felt like he had just entered hell. Not only did his entire body tremble violently, but even his legs shook. I'm done for. I'm done for. How is this person the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan? Yang Tai, of all the people you could provoke, you just had to provoke the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. You've doomed me. The captain sobbed inside. At the same time, he had already become pale. He was the captain of a group of guards in the royal capital, but the royal capital was so big. There were naturally many guards as a result, as well as countless captains like him in the city. Although he worked for the government, his status was nothing special. No one would be able to save him once he offended an overgod. Even if an organization with an overgod stood behind him, very few overgods would step forwards to speak for him. After all, purposefully offending an overgod was completely different from suffering unwanted harassment from an overgod. Suddenly, the captain of the guards dropped to his knees and constantly lowered his head towards Jian Chun. As his forehead smacked against the floor, there was a constant banging sound. He did not use origin energy to protect himself. As such, after just a few times, his forehead had become all bloodied. Patriarch, this one has been ignorant. This one did not know that the patriarch had come to the royal capital personally. The captain's attitude changed drastically. He constantly bowed his head as he asked for forgiveness and guilt. Even with the entire divine kingdom of Pingtian in perspective, there were only a little over a dozen overgods. Every single one of them possessed a significant status in the divine kingdom. He understood exactly what offending an expert like that entailed. Although he had a connection to the Yang family because he had married one of Yang Tai's female cousins, his wife also possessed no status in the Yang family. The Yang family would never step forwards to speak for him. Commander Peng stared at the captain coldly. There was no sympathy in his eyes at all. He turned towards Jianchen and asked, "Patriarch, how do you want to deal with this person?" Jianchen shrugged. He looked at the captain who had a bloodied forehead and sighed gently, "You can go." However, as the captain of a squadron of guards, I hope that you can carry out your duties seriously. Do not get your personal interests involved. Spared, the captain left the place as if he was fleeing for his life after thanking Jianchun. Patriarch, the commander, Commander Xian, has invited you to visit his estate. I was wondering if the patriarch would be willing. 10,000 men, Commander Peng said with clasped hands. I just happen to be wanting to visit Commander Xian. However, it'll just attract too much attention if I go with your soldiers. You can go back first. I'll visit the commander's estate afterwards by myself, said Jianchun. Yes, sir. 10,000 men, Commander Peng clasped his hands at Jianchun before leaving with his 2,000-man commanders. Xian Ruru naturally did not stay behind after Commander Peng departed. She immediately bid farewell to Jianchun extremely politely. In the blink of an eye, the room where Jianchun stayed was emptied out once again. There were only bloody marks left on the ground as evidence for everything that had just happened. Jianchun glanced at the bloody patches on the ground and sighed gently. I never thought all of this would happen. Looks like the royal capital isn't as perfect as I believed it to be. The rules of the royal capital affect ordinary cultivators, but it does not affect people from those powerful organizations and clans. After sighing, Jianchun leapt out the window. He turned into a faint blur as he shot off into the distance. He moved like the wind, where the cultivators on the streets below failed to notice him at all. There were a total of 5 commanders' estates in the royal capital. They were located in the north, south, east, west, and center. The commanders' estates that lay in the 4 cardinal directions belonged to commanders who guarded the territory of the Divine Kingdom. They remained near the edge of the kingdom most of the time, and rarely returned to the royal capital. The central estate belonged to Commander Xiando. Not only was Xiando a late overgod, but he was also the commander of the Royal Divine Army. He was the person in control of the strongest army in the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. In terms of status, he was one that was only surpassed by few. However, Xiando always kept a low profile and rarely showed off. As a result, his prestige within the Divine Kingdom was below the Yang families. After leaving the inn, Jianchun directly made his way towards the central commander's estate. Even though the royal capital was extremely large, he only used a short while to arrive before the main entrance with his speed. Ha ha ha, brother Jianchun, you've finally come. Looks like my estate is just a little too small. I've waited several decades for you, and you've finally come. At this moment, Xiando emerged from within and laughed aloud. At the moment, he was wearing simple clothes. I wanted to visit Commander Xian much earlier, but I've always remained in cultivation. I've only emerged recently. Jianchun clasped his hands toward Xiando before being invited into the estate warmly. Jianchun and Xiando conversed easily in a guest room of the estate. They went from talking about personal experiences in cultivation and comprehension, to various affairs that were happening in the saint's world. They spoke for around 30 hours straight before they showed some signs of stopping. All right, Commander Xiando, I have something I'd like to ask you about. Suddenly, Jianchun stopped smiling. What is it, brother Jianchun? Go on ahead, there's no need to be so polite, Xiando said happily. Jianchun stood up. With a wave of his hand, he removed a crystal casket from the Bright Moon Divine Hall, and placed it onto the ground gently. Chapter 1835. The method to save Kaya. On the crystal casket quietly lied a fist-sized beast. It seemed like a winged ant, and it shone with red, orange, and yellow. At the same time, its clever eyes stared at the nearby Xiando, indicating much caution. This little beast has already become a god, yet it still can't assume a human form. Xiando was surprised when he saw the 7-colored heaven-devouring beast. The 7-colored heaven-devouring beast had no problems in understanding Xiando. It immediately raised its head up high, showing much disdain toward Xiando. You're actually looking down on me. Xiando could not but smile. This was the first time in his life that he, the commander of the Royal Divine Army and a late overgod, was actually looked down upon by a little beast that was only a god. Jianchun looked away from the 7-colored heaven-devouring beast, and looked towards Kaya, who laid in the crystal casket. He said, Commander Xian, this is a friend of mine. She was heavily injured in the past and fell unconscious as a result. However, I've healed all her physical injuries many years ago, and I even used heavenly resources that specialized in healing the soul on her. However, she has never even stirred. Do you know any way to make my friend recover? Only after hearing that did Xiando look away from the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast. He stared at the crystal coffin where Kaya resided with much interest. Due to the huge disparity in strength, he was able to inspect Kaya's body completely without even opening the casket. The situation immediately made him frown. After a moment of silence, Xiando said, "Jianchen, your friend is not injured at all. At the same time, her life force is plentiful, so that hasn't been touched at all. As a result, it's possible to conclude that the reason for her unconsciousness has nothing to do with her body. There must be other reasons for it." "Oh right. How long has your friend been unconscious for?" Xiando looked at Jianchen. "Almost 100 years, said Jianchen. 100 years? Xiando furrowed his brows deeply. He paced around the crystal casket with crossed arms as his eyes shone. He stared at the unconscious Kaya as he sank into his thoughts. A while later he said slowly, "If she hasn't woken up after close to 100 years and her physical condition is perfect, it must be due to her soul. I guessed it had to do with the soul as well, but I was unable to find any problems with it at all. I've used heavenly resources for her soul as well, but they've failed to produce any effect at all." Jianchen sighed gently. He felt helpless. He had concluded that Kaya's problem laid in her soul long ago. However, since it was a problem with her soul, a single droplet of sap from the amethyst spiritual bamboo should have been more than enough for her to recover, provided her soul remained intact. He himself had used the sap in the past before, so he understood exactly just how potent it was. And since a single droplet did not work, he had tried multiple droplets as well, but it was still useless. In his eyes, Kaya was a saint emperor. She was nowhere near the origin realm. As such, let alone a droplet, but even half a droplet or less than that would have been almost enough to pull her back from the dead. Of course, there was another possibility, which was that the sap from the amethyst spiritual bamboo was nowhere near enough to awaken Kaya. However, Jianchen never considered this because Kaya was only a saint emperor. Problems of the soul are the most difficult things to resolve, not to mention the fact that your friend's a little too weak. She hasn't even reached godhood, so she won't have any tolerance towards wounds of the soul at all. Brother Jianchen, I'd advise you to find some heavenly resources or pills of higher grades. Although you've used a heavenly resource like this on her in the past, you need to understand that there are many heavenly resources that have these properties. Maybe the one you used was not suitable for your friend's condition, Xiando recommended. He was helpless over injuries of the soul. Jianchen sighed gently. He put the crystal casket away again. There was also nothing he could do about Kaya's current situation, which was why he had asked Xiando. Suddenly, Xiando's face changed. He said, "In 3 days, the United Imperial Merchants Association just so happens to be holding their once every 100-year auction. The United Imperial Merchants Association is the greatest merchants association in the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. Not only do they have businesses across the entire Divine Kingdom, but they've even dabbled in the surrounding Divine Kingdoms. They do have some valuable items among the things that they have collected. And in the auction this time, I think there just happens to be a heavenly resource that deals with problems of the soul-drawing lotus. Brother Jianchen, maybe you could try acquiring it." "The soul-drawing lotus," Jianchen murmured, and his eyes gradually lit up. However, all heavenly resources that heal the soul, regardless of grade, will be at least several times or several dozen times more expensive than other heavenly resources of the same grade. It could even be more expensive by a greater factor than that. Brother Jianchen, you have to be ready. Oh right, I just happen to have 5 blocks of high-grade divine crystal here. Take them for now," said Xiando as he immediately handed over 5 blocks of divine crystal. "Thank you for your kind intentions, Commander Xian, but I just happen to have a few divine crystals on me. Buying the heavenly resource shouldn't be too great of a problem." Jianchen turned down Xiando. Before long, he bid farewell to Xiando and left the estate. In another region of the royal capital, There were two veiled women in white dresses who moved through the bustling streets. Without any exhaustion at all, they moved from store to store with interest. Whenever they saw something that caught their eye, they would purchase it regardless of the price. Who knew just how many things they had already purchased along the way? Their reckless way of buying things naturally caught the attention of some other people with ill intentions. However, as soon as they began to stalk the two women, one of the ladies would glance at them, and they would pale immediately. After that, they would flee for their lives, unwilling to stay put for any longer. Sister Shiyu, this piece of clothing is so pretty. If you wear it, you'll have even more charm. When Patriarch Jianchen sees you, he'll definitely become infatuated. One of the two veiled women said to the other secretly in one store. Emoyen, what are you saying? You need to control your mouth. Hehe. Sister Shiyu, look at this piece of clothing. Do you think Patriarch Jianchen will seem even bolder if he wears it? Yep, that's it. I've made up my mind. I'm buying this to give to Patriarch Jianchen. The two veiled women were Shiyu and Emoyen from the Tianyuan clan. Like Jianchen, they had also come to the royal capital of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Chapter 1836. The Yang family's response. Beauty and shopping were the natural hobbies of almost all women. Very few women were able to form exceptions. Emoyen and Shiyu were naturally like that as well. Even a god like Shiyu, someone who could be considered as an expert in the entire divine kingdom of Pingtian, was unable to resist her love for shopping and beauty. Shiyu and Emoyen were having a great time in the royal capital. They shopped like madmen, buying away everything that caught their eye. They spent money like it was worth nothing. However, Shiyu naturally could afford to spend like this with her personal wealth and her status as a god. Sister Shiyu, there are 3 more days before the centennial auction of the royal capital. It'll definitely be full of people. Let's go and check it out when it happens. Emoyen said to Shiyu with much excitement and eagerness. Shiyu nodded. Quite a lot of interesting items should appear in the centennial auction. Let's go check it out when it does happen. Let's hope that we can find the supreme grade materials that the Patriarch ordered us to look for. The supreme grade materials Shiyu spoke of were naturally the items for forging Jianchen's twin swords. When he left the Tianyuan clan, he had created a list of all the materials he needed to forge the twin swords. With help from the sword spirits, he had recorded all the characteristics and methods of procuring them in great detail, so that the people of the clan could collect them. Unfortunately, all the materials Jianchen required were of supreme grade, making them simply too rare for a place like the divine kingdom of Pingtian. As a result, they had yet to find anything so far. Jianchen had only managed to collect the violet scale stone and the profound lightning rock from God King Duanmu's space ring so far. The Yang family was located in a large estate towards the center of the royal capital. In a radius of 5 kilometers from the estate, all people were forbidden apart from members of the Yang family. There was a majestic discussion hall in the large estate. The atmosphere in there was particularly stuffy. Not only was the patriarch of the Yang family present, seated on the patriarch's throne emotionlessly, but there were over 20 male and female gods seated below him. They were all gods and every single one of them was solemn. In the center of the hall stood the young master of the Yang family, Yang Tai, with his bloodied clothes. One of his arms was missing. His shoulder throbbed with intense pain, causing his face to constantly twitch. Father, that is how everything happened. That person went too far, provoking our Yang family time and time again. Our Yang family is one of the most powerful clans. How can we allow others to look down on us so much? Yang Tai narrated the entire story after bending some truths. He only felt utter hatred towards Jianchen now. A god who sat to the left of the patriarch became furious after Yang Tai finished his story. Humph, those are all lies. There were 4 elders present in total, yet he was still able to kill one of them with such ease. Only overgods can achieve something like that. And who do you think overgods are? Why would they lower themselves to the level of a wastrel like you and abuse people that are far less great than them? In my opinion, the matter was probably instigated by you. Yang Tai, do you understand just how much trouble you've caused? Because of you, Not only has our young family lost an elder, but we've also offended an overgod. You can't just provoke overgods for no good reason. If we let you continue like this, you'll create great problems for the clan sooner or later. The person who dared to speak out against Yang Tai before the patriarch and all the elders was an esteemed member of the Yang family. He was the elder brother of the current patriarch, Yang Lianxin. He had failed during the fight for the position of the patriarch in the past, which was why his younger brother was the patriarch now. Although he was now the grand elder of the Yang family, he possessed nowhere near as much power as the patriarch due to the differences in the system of the Yang family. He still desired the position of the patriarch very much, so he obviously would not miss a chance to admonish his younger brother. A few elders immediately added to Yang Lianxin's words. They agreed with him. The patriarch's face became ugly. He growled, "Enough. Since everything has already happened, there's no point dwelling on these matters. Even if it were really Tyre's fault, the overgod only needed to dish out a slight punish. Instead, he killed an elder of our Yang family. Our elders can't just be killed like that. If we don't demand a proper explanation, will we still have the dignity to remain in the royal capital in the future? Yang Aoran, do you plan on biting off more than you can chew by trying to take revenge against the overgod? It's not that I, your elder brother, don't believe in you, but you really don't have that power. So just listen to me. Don't trouble the ancestor," Yang Lianxin sneered. He secretly rejoiced, as Yang Tai's mistakes gave him hopes of removing his younger brother from the position of patriarch. This was because no matter what Yang Aoran did in response to the matter, a mistake was still a mistake. If he continued to pursue the matter, he might end up completely offending an overgod. Although the Yang family no longer feared most overgods with their power, they still could not go around provoking overgods, not even early overgods. Even if they had already completely offended the overgod, they would still have to consider whether pursuing the matter was worth it or not. However, if they did not pursue the matter, the Yang family's status would plummet. There might even be other people with ill intentions who would use the matter to write other things and create a greater negative image of the Yang family. As the patriarch of the Yang family, Yang Aoran would be directly responsible. The patriarch naturally suspected that his elder brother eyed his position. He stared at Yang Lianxin coldly and said emotionlessly, "Elder brother, do you know why you were unable to become the patriarch? It's because you don't understand the ancestor at all. If you can understand him slightly, even just a little bit, the position of patriarch would have definitely ended up in your hands and not mine." Yang Lianxin was surprised by these words. He thought, is the reason why Yang Aoran is willing to pursue the matter because he understands the ancestor? Is he certain that the ancestor would support him? Pass down orders to immediately investigate all information regarding this overgod. Once the ancestor emerges, allow him to make the final decision, Yang Aoran immediately ordered. He had no intentions of blaming Yang Tai, and it was evident just how much he spoilt Yang Tai. Chapter 1837. The United Imperial Auction. Jian Chen emerged from Xiandou's estate. He did not return to the Perched Phoenix immediately. Instead, he strolled through the streets of the royal capital by himself. He did not even miss the free markets in the royal capital that sold a few items for independent cultivators. The royal capital was extremely large. Just the city itself was several times larger than the Jessin kingdom. However, with Jian Chen's current strength, he only needed 2 days to go through all the stores. However, his actions in the past 2 days were rather strange. He moved quickly, traversing hundreds or even thousands of meters with each step. He basically made his way down every street and alleyway. He visited areas with a dense population of shops or free markets on purpose. It seemed like he wanted to buy something, but he did not even enter a single store during the 2 days. His actions were rather confusing. I've basically searched through the entire royal capital, but I haven't even found a single material for the twin swords. Jian Chen returned to the Perched Phoenix Inn. He stood in the same room as before as he gazed outside the window and mumbled to himself. He had always been searching for the materials for the twin swords in the past 2 days. Although he had never entered a single store, He had been looking secretly. He would sense it as soon as he discovered any of the necessary materials. There's still another day before the centennial auction held by the United Imperial Merchants Association. The soul-drawing lotus holds the hopes of waking up Kaya. Even though the chances aren't significant, I have to obtain it. Jianchen murmured softly as his gaze became extremely determined. Afterwards, he tidied through all the divine crystals on him. After spending 6 blocks for the startling rainbow sword, he only had 4 blocks of high-grade divine crystals remaining from the 10 he had received from the Divine King. Additionally, he still had a few of the supreme-grade divine crystals from God King Duanmu's space ring. Although there was not a lot of them, there was roughly a block of high-grade divine crystal, if he broke it down. 5 blocks. Even many clans with gods can't take out a sum like that. Only clans with overgods would have that much. It should be more than enough to get the soul-drawing lotus. Jianchen felt certain. In the blink of an eye, the day of the centennial auction held by the Imperial United Merchants Association arrived. Clearly, the city was especially bustling on this day. There were discussions about the auction everywhere on the streets. Many people discussed in great interest just what valuable items would appear on the auction this time. Or they would be sighing in pity that they did not have the power to take part in the auction this time. The area around the Imperial United Merchants Association was already packed. Many people stood in line with their seating tickets. They all slowly entered the huge, majestic building where the auction would be held. On the other side for the VIP entrance, a red carpet had already been rolled out on the floor that was covered with fragrant petals. Beautiful female servants stood in a row with smiles on their faces, as they constantly welcomed the esteemed guests. Any person who could enter the auction through the VIP entrance possessed great statuses. Most of them came from organizations with overgods. Not only did this include organizations native to the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian, but it also included clans and organizations from neighboring divine kingdoms as well. The Imperial United Merchants Association was just too famous. They had held countless auctions across the years, and almost every single one of them would have treasures that were enough to interest clans with overgods. That's the carriage of the Guhun clan. The people of the Guhun clan have come. Do you see that white carriage with a snowflake imprint? That's the people of the Yubing clan from the frigid snow province. The people from the commander's estate have come as well. That lady seems to be their first young lady, Xian Ruru. The carriage of the Yang family has come as well. That young man seems to be their young master, Yang Tai. Wasn't his arm cut off a few days ago? He has actually completely recovered now. Do you see that flag with the stars? That's the royal family of the Divine Kingdom of 9 stars. As the extremely luxurious carriages arrived, and people from overgod organizations arrived one by one, the VIP entrance immediately became busy. Countless people gazed over, and the area became the center of attention. Whoa, Sister Shiyu, there are so many people here. It's so busy. At this moment, Mo Yen and Shiyu arrived. Their faces remained veiled. They did not arrive in luxurious carriages. Instead, they made their way over from afar, trudging over the carpet towards the entrance. Who are those 2 women? Don't they seem quite sorry arriving like this? Other people have come in luxurious carriages, while they've come on foot. Clearly, the organization behind the 2 women is just too weak. That's because they come from a clan with gods. They don't have the confidence of an overgod clan. Many people stared at Mo Yen and Shiyu as they secretly judged them. They did not look at them with the fear and envy that they showed towards overgod clans. Mo Yen and Shiyu did not mind it at all. They giggled as they walked, making their way into the auction elegantly. Afterwards, guests from various organizations arrived one after another. Most of them were famed overgod clans from neighboring divine kingdoms. They either came on powerful, rare beasts or rode luxurious carriages. They all paraded their wealth. Of course, there were also a few guests from clans with gods. Naturally, they did not parade their wealth as much, but they still made arrangements, so they would receive the respect that they deserved. Very few entered with such a low profile like Shiyu and Mo Yen. As everyone poured into the auction center, fewer and fewer people remained outside. Just as the doors were about to close, The white-robed Jianchen arrived in the distance steadily. He also entered through the VIP entrance as the last person to go in. The auction center was extremely large, and it was enough to seat several tens of thousand people. Currently, Jianchen sat in his private viewing box with his eyes closed, resting and waiting quietly for the auction to start. Around 5 minutes later, the auction finally started. The hostess for the auction was a mature, well-endowed and beautiful woman. Her level of cultivation was extraordinary as well, as she was a god. I am Od, the hostess for this centennial auction held by the Imperial United Merchants Association. Greetings to all. The hostess smiled gently as she stood on the stage. After introducing herself, she directly got to the point and began auctioning the first item. The first treasure is a flying sword. Even though it's only a medium-quality saint artifact, it has reached the peak of the medium quality. As a result, even when compared to inferior high-quality saint artifacts, it is almost the same in power. It's an extraordinary and rare piece of work. Everyone, you must understand just what a high-quality saint artifact is worth. This flying sword is almost on the same level, so I presume I don't need to explain any further the value of this flying sword. The starting price is 10,000 high-grade divine crystals. Od held a long, embroidered box as she introduced the item to everyone. To no surprise, a sword lay within the box, and it shone with a cold and threatening light. Chapter 1838. Sword of weighs 15,000 high-grade divine crystals, 20,000 high-grade divine crystals, 30,000 high-grade divine crystals, 100,000 high-grade divine crystals. The flying sword intrigued many people. At the same time, there were a few people who revealed much desire and yearning towards possessing it. As a result, the price surpassed 100,000 high-grade divine crystals very quickly. There were 3 grades among medium-quality saint artifacts. Although Jianchen had also obtained a medium-quality saint artifact in the Dong'an province, the flying snow sword, it was far, far cheaper than the flying sword right now. This was because the flying snow sword could only be considered as a rather normal medium-quality saint artifact. As a matter of fact, it was nowhere near the level of being considered as a superior medium-quality saint artifact, while the flying sword that had appeared in the auction was a masterpiece. Even though it was also of medium quality, it was basically on par with inferior high-quality saint artifacts, so it would naturally be extremely valuable. 150,000 high-quality divine crystals. 180,000 high-quality divine crystals. The price of the medium-quality saint artifact continued to climb. Many people bid for it, which was why its price rose like this. It had already surpassed the limit that many clans with gods could afford, so they could only give up on it. Now, only a few people from clans with overgods within the private viewing boxes contended for it. After a fierce struggle, the flying sword that was only slightly inferior to a high-quality saint artifact was purchased by a person from an overgod organization from the divine kingdom of Kaiyuan. The items for auction were brought up one by one. Not only were there various saint artifacts, but there were also a few precious heavenly resources, truth-tier battle skills, cultivation methods, and notes on cultivation. There were even various formation discs and banners that possessed extraordinary power. In such a grand auction, there were naturally various pills that normally never appeared. Even 3 soul recovery pills appeared, which piqued even Jianchen's interest. He was tempted to buy all 3 of them immediately. Soul recovery pills could save his life in crucial times. If he had enough of them, he would have no need to worry about the consequences of consuming all the power of his soul from using 2 strands of profound sword chi together. Unfortunately, the soul recovery pills were just too expensive. Basically, every single one of them had been sold for over 200,000 high-grade divine crystals, so Jianchen could only suppress his desire. He still had a few soul recovery pills that he had obtained from God King Duanmu's space ring. As a result, he was not in desperate need of the pills right now. He had to use the limited sum of divine crystals he had to buy the soul-drawing lotus. I believe many will find interest in the item for auction next. The hostess smiled on the stage. She currently held an embroidered box covered in formations with great caution. Ever since the auction began, This was the first time the hostess had revealed such a stern expression, which made people realize that the item within the box was probably something special. At that moment, everyone became interested. Their eyes shone as they stared at the box within Odie's hands. Odie carefully removed the formations on the box. She moved extremely slowly and with great care. However, it was exactly because of her actions that everyone became even more intrigued by the item within the box. Finally, the formations on the box was completely removed. Odie used her elegant fingers to remove the lid carefully. Instantly, a deathly presence of destruction began to radiate from it, filling the entire auction center. The expressions of all the gods present changed drastically, revealing their shock. Jianshan also became surprised. He stared at the box. Within the box laid a translucent sword that was the length of a hand. The deathly presence of destruction experienced by all the gods originated from this sword. Odie brought the box around so that everyone could see it before closing the box immediately. She cut off the presence of the sword that was extremely terrifying to gods. A sword of ways! It's a sword of ways! Someone suddenly cried out from one of the private boxes. The tens of thousands of people present were immediately thrown into an uproar when they heard this person's words. They all discussed with each other softly as shock was plastered across their faces. Odie stood on the stage as her gentle and pleasant voice rang out. Correct, this is a sword of ways, and it's one condensed by an over-god. Odie continued. Although many of you have already recognized what it is, I believe there are still quite a few of you who have no idea what a sword of ways is. Allow me to explain in detail. A sword of ways cannot be condensed by those below over-god. Once someone reaches over-god, they can use their comprehension to control the laws of the world and forcefully seal it into a piece of stone of ways, which forms a sword of ways. Each sword's power is equivalent to a strike from the expert who condensed the sword. It's only a single attack condensed from the laws of the world, so it lacks adaptability and ingenuity, making it very difficult to threaten experts of the same level. However, it is a fatal threat to those one cultivation level lower. It can kill them instantly, or even heavily injure a large group of people. Let's use the sword of ways here as an example. It was condensed by an over-god, so you all must have sensed how terrifying it was. May I ask just how great of a chance do you have to survive if someone used this against you? Many people paled slightly when they heard Odie's explanation. They became extremely stern. Before, they had all clearly sensed the presence of destruction from within the sword of ways. In front of the presence, all of them felt their souls tremble. A sliver of pity appeared on Odie's face. She continued, unfortunately, although overgods only need some time to condense a sword of ways, the stones of ways that can record the laws of the world are extremely hard to find, which is why swords of ways are extremely rare in our region. Odie's face suddenly changed. She raised the box up high and said, "The bidding for the sword of ways starts now. If you need a clan treasure, if you need a trump card to save your life, if you have an enemy who is also a god, you cannot miss the opportunity to purchase this item. The starting price is 500,000 high-grade divine crystals." Chapter 1839. The soul-drawing lotus appears for a moment. The auction center fell dead silent. After the hostess announced the starting price, no one added to it. Everyone stared at the embroidered box in Odie's hands. There were no exceptions, not even people from over-god organizations. The light in their eyes flickered as they secretly pondered to themselves. Odie stood on the stage quietly. She was not surprised by this at all. Instead, she smiled confidently. This was the calm before the storm. The appearance of the Sword of Ways would definitely lead the auction to a new high. This was because the Sword of Ways was far more valuable than any item auctioned earlier. Since no one is bidding, allow me to start. 600,000. Everyone, if you want the Sword of Ways, you can't keep up the silence, or once she counts to 3. The Way of Swords will be purchased by me for 600,000 high-grade divine crystals. The strange silence did not last for very long. It was disturbed by a confident, middle-aged man. His voice came from a viewing box, and it sounded like he was smiling when he said that. "You must be joking, brother. After all, A sword of ways is useless for overgods, but it holds extremely great significance to us. You would be bringing disgrace to the sword of ways to purchase it with just 600,000 high-grade divine crystals. It would also tarnish the name of the overgod who created it. A voice rang out from another viewing box as soon as the middle-aged man finished speaking. The voice was rather feminine and was riddled with disdain. Afterwards, the feminine voice stated his price coldly after a slight pause. The Zhan clan of the Divine Kingdom of Scarlet Clouds will pay 1,000,000 high-grade divine crystals. It's the people from the Zhan clan. I never thought that in that viewing box that the people of the Zhan clan. Not only does the Zhan clan have an overgod, but they're extremely powerful as well. In the Divine Kingdom of Scarlet Clouds, they're equivalent to the Yang family in the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. Are they that only clan that possesses 2 overgods in the Divine Kingdom of Scarlet Clouds? After the Zhan clan stated their identity, a series of discussions immediately sprang up around the auction center. Many people showed surprise when they discussed the Zhan clan. It was extremely rare for a clan to have 2 overgods in the surrounding Divine Kingdoms. Even when looking at all the Divine Kingdoms in the entire region, it would be very difficult to find another clan with 2 overgods. The fame of the Zhan clan really was widespread. However, fame was only fame. 90% of all the people seated in the viewing boxes came from overgod clans, so they naturally would not hold back in the face of such a treasure. 1,200,000 high-grade divine crystals. 1,300,000 high-grade divine crystals. The bidding war for the Sword of Ways was extremely intense. Basically, most of the people from overgod clans took part in the bidding war this time. After all, the Sword of Ways possessed the power to kill a god instantly, and even late gods would not be able to avoid such a fate. Clans with overgods would naturally value a treasure like that. The price rapidly soared, surpassing 2,000,000 high-grade divine crystals very soon. A few overgod clans gave up on the bidding war, but there were still many who did not back off, and they constantly added to the price. As a matter of fact, there were even people who began to name their clans in hopes that the prestige of their clan could deter the other competitors. Unfortunately, the clans did not really fear each other, as they came from different divine kingdoms. In the end, the Sword of Ways was purchased by an overgod organization from the Divine Kingdom of 9 Stars for 4,000,000 high-grade divine crystals. Even Jianchen was amazed by the price. He had learnt quite a lot about Swords of Ways from Commander Xiandou. Creating one was nothing difficult for an overgod. All they needed was some time. The true obstacle was finding a Stone of Ways that could carry the laws of the world. If he possessed a Stone of Ways, would he not be able to make millions of high-quality divine crystals in such an easy fashion? Afterwards, a few more items were sold. Every single one of them was extraordinary. Even to the overgod clans, these were exceptional treasures. Their final prices were shockingly high, reaching into hundreds of thousand high-grade divine crystals at the very least. After all, the Imperial United Merchants Association had scoured the lands for a century to collect all of these things. Anything they took out would definitely be valuable. Everyone, the item next is extremely valuable. However, due to its special characteristics, it cannot be revealed to the outside world for long periods of time, and must be stored away carefully to preserve its greatest efficacy. Everyone, please look closely. Odie held an ancient wooden box that was a foot in length and width. The box was sealed tightly, and as she spoke, she gradually opened it. Immediately, a wondrous fragrance was emitted. The fragrance caused everyone's souls to shake. At that moment, everyone felt their souls tremble uncontrollably. A feeling of either comfort or intoxication pervaded the depths of their heads. Jianchen's eyes snapped open at this moment. A strange light filled his eyes as he stared at the wooden box. Inside the wooden box laid a lotus. It was only the size of a fist, and it was black like ink. Its 9 petals laid open and trembled gently. Every single petal possessed a strange pattern, which seemed to interweave with the laws of the world. They seemed to possess a mysterious power. In just a split second, OD closed the lid of the box again, and reactivated the formation on it, completely covering up the soul-drawing lotus presence again. She smiled faintly. This is the soul-drawing lotus. It's extremely rare, and is extremely effective for healing wounds of the soul. At the same time, it can consolidate and strengthen the soul. You all must know its value, so I'll cut to the chase. The starting price is 500,000 high-grade divine crystals. The soul-drawing lotus. It really is the soul-drawing lotus. Our Grand Elder is saved. A middle-aged man with eyebrows as straight as swords stared at the wooden box in Odie's hands as he spoke with a trembling voice within his viewing box. The soul-drawing lotus plays a direct role in whether our Grand Elder lives or not. As a result, we have to buy it no matter what. There were 3 other men of the same age aside from the person who had spoken first. One of them spoke coldly, and confidence filled his eyes. He was eager to obtain it. Chapter 1840. The Thunder Family. It's a pity that the Grand Elder is still a late god. His heavy wounds to the soul several dozen years ago have damaged his vitality. Even if his soul is cured with the soul-drawing lotus, he probably won't be able to reach over God. The ancestor is only willing to spend 3 blocks of high-quality divine crystals on him. And that's all because of all the contributions he made to the clan as the Grand Elder. Let's just hope that there won't be too many people who bid for the soul-drawing lotus. Although 3 million high-grade divine crystals should technically be enough to purchase the heavenly resource, I am just worried that the price will climb higher and higher if there are a lot of bidders, said a third middle-aged man. He was slightly worried. We have to obtain the soul-drawing lotus. Even if someone else manages to buy the lotus, let's see if they have the power to take it away with them. The fourth middle-aged man said coldly as a serious light flickered through his eyes. At the same time, a few other people from clans with overgods in other viewing boxes desired the soul-drawing lotus as well. Although many heavenly resources could heal the soul in the saints' world, most of them were ordinary items that were not very useful to people at higher cultivation realms. On the other hand, high-grade heavenly resources like soul-drawing lotuses were extremely rare. It did not matter whether they needed it or not. If they could buy it, they could just put it aside for when they needed it. After just a few bids, the price of the lotus rose to 1 million high-grade divine crystals. The people from the overgod clans understood its value, so they all took part in the bidding. None of them were willing to miss it. 1,200,000 high-grade divine crystals. 1,300,000 high-grade divine crystals. 1,800,000 high-grade divine crystals. The 4 middle-aged men became rather impatient as they watched the price climb. Immediately, one of them stood up and clasped his hands towards the window of his viewing box. Everyone, we come from the Thunder family of the divine kingdom of Ether Cloud. Our Grand Elder has suffered extremely severe injuries to the soul, where it has even reached the stage where his life is threatened. We are in desperate need of the soul-drawing lotus. Moreover, the ancestor has given us, the Lightning Brothers, orders when we came here today. He instructed us that we have to obtain this soul-drawing lotus no matter what to save the Grand Elder. As a result, I hope everyone can give up on it, and allow our Thunder family to take the lotus. Our Thunder family will feel deep gratitude if that happens. We are going to bid 2,500,000 high-grade divine crystals. I do believe that this is a worthy price for the lotus. The Thunder family of the divine kingdom of Ethercloud is an extremely impressive clan. It's said that a god king appeared for them 100,000 years ago, but he vanished mysteriously afterwards. I never thought that the Lightning Brothers would personally come. They're the 4 heavenly kings of the Thunder family, and they all possess extremely great strength. It's said that they've grasped a combination attack, where they can even overcome the huge disparity, and fend off overgods when they work together. It's extremely powerful. The competition for the soul-drawing lotus came to a temporary halt after the Lightning Brothers spoke out. The price remained at 2,500,000 high-grade divine crystals. No one bid for quite some time. Most of the people gathered here came from different divine kingdoms. With the obstruction of a border, the divine kingdoms did not fear each other as much, given that the clans possessed similar strength. However, the Thunder family of the divine kingdom of Ethercloud was an exception. They were extremely powerful and great deviants. Even with the existence of borders, most people did not dare to offend the Thunder family. Even one of the most powerful clans in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, the Yang family, feared the Thunder family very much. The Thunder family of the divine kingdom of Ether Cloud? Jianchen murmured to himself quietly. He could not help but think of the information he had learnt during his conversation with Xian Dou about the Thunder family. Even Xian Dou feared the Thunder family slightly, because there was a rumor that they had gained a god king 100,000 years ago. The rumor was basically confirmed, but for some reason, the god king vanished mysteriously. There had been no news of him since. Even when ignoring the missing god king of the Thunder family, their strength in general was extremely great and terrifying. It was rumored that the Thunder family originated from an extremely mysterious and ancient royal family. Their bloodline was special, giving them a natural affinity with lightning. Over 90% of the Thunder family would become gods by comprehending the laws of lightning, which was one of the most offensive laws among them all. It stood beside the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction. Moreover, the people from the Thunder family were much more skilled with the laws of lightning than others. The entire clan was basically favored by lightning, so they possessed a natural advantage. Aside from that, there was another important reason. They were also a clan with 2 overgods. Since the Thunder family is in desperate need of the soul-drawing lotus, our Chu clan will give up on it. Our Cloud Separation sect will also give up on the lotus. The Heaven-scaling pavilion will give up on the soul-drawing lotus. Many organizations with overgods gave up on the heavenly resource. Basically, all of them declared their names to express their kind intentions, as they were unwilling to offend the Thunder family. The 4 brothers gradually smiled. They all let out a sigh of relief. However, before they could maintain their smile for long, a calm voice rang out. I will pay 3 million high-grade divine crystals. I am also in great need of the soul-drawing lotus. Jianchen finally stated his price from his own viewing box. He needed the soul-drawing lotus, as it was a key to awakening Kaya. The entire auction center fell silent. They all glanced in the direction of Jianchen's voice, looking towards his viewing box. Unfortunately, the curtains were closed, and there were formations that warded off the senses of the soul. As a result, unless the person inside was willing, other people would not be able to send in their senses to observe the interior. Shi Yu and Mo Yan sat in a viewing box leisurely. They watched the ferocious struggles within the auction center with interest. However, when they heard Jianchen's voice, their faces immediately froze. Sister Shi Yu T, that seems to be Patriarch Jianchen. Do you think Patriarch Jianchen is here? Mo Yan's eyes widened as she stared at Shi Yu in surprise, but her face gradually lit up. Shi Yu nodded silently. She said quietly, yes, that's the Patriarch's voice. The Patriarch has gone missing for several decades. News had only just appeared that he was in God King Duanmu's dwelling, but who would have thought he would actually come to the royal capital? And he is even taking part in the auction this time. Chapter 1841. Refinement Adamantine. Who is in that viewing box? He's unwilling to step down even for the famed Thunder family from the divine kingdom of Ether Cloud. Moreover, seeing how calmly he spoke, he possesses great confidence. Clearly, he doesn't fear the Thunder family. None of us can afford to offend the Thunder family, nor can we offend that existence who does not even fear the Thunder family. Whatever. We won't take part in the bidding war for the soul-drawing lotus. We can't afford to offend either of them, so we must never state a price. If we do state a price, they'll probably bear grudges with us even if one of them do obtain it in the end. All the people from the overgod organizations made up their minds. They were all extremely fearful of the Thunder family. Over 90% of the people with the bloodline of the Thunder family would comprehend the laws of lightning once they reached godhood, which was one of the laws with the greatest offensive power. The special bloodline of the clan shocked everyone, and it also filled them with fear towards it. Combined with the existence of 2 overgods, with one having reached late overgod in particular, the Thunder family could be crowned as the greatest clan in the region without any dispute. Only the royal families of the divine kingdoms would be able to keep them at bay. Moreover, a god king had even appeared in the clan 100,000 years ago. Although he had vanished mysteriously, There was no news of his death. If the missing God King was included, then even the royal families would fear the Thunder family. Jian Chen's bid made the four brothers reveal rather ugly expressions. The soul-drawing lotus was just too important to them, as it was directly connected to their grand elder's life. Greetings from the Lightning Brothers. However, we are in desperate need of the soul-drawing lotus, so we must obtain it no matter what. I hope you can stand down. We will be filled with gratitude if you do that, one of the four brothers said. Although he spoke calmly, his voice was filled with a sense of forcefulness, and it was like a threat. They had to obtain this item no matter what. That was more than enough for Jian Chen to understand that even if he truly managed to buy the soul-drawing lotus, the four brothers would probably use everything they had to claim the lotus. That naturally included theft. I'm also trying to save the life of a friend by buying this lotus. As a result, I can't let you have it. Moreover, I too have made up my mind, just like you four brothers, Jian Chen responded firmly. He did not leave them any grounds for discussion. Everyone immediately became astounded when they heard Jian Chen's words. Even the people from other Overgod clans looked towards Jian Chen's viewing box. They also wondered whether Jian Chen really possessed the strength where there was no need for him to fear the Thunder family since he spoke like that. Or was it because he had no idea about the power of the Thunder family? The four brothers fell silent. Currently, their faces had become terrifyingly sunken. At the same time, they experienced some resentment, questioning why the ancestor did not place more importance on the Grand Elder, and was only willing to spend 3 blocks of high-grade divine crystals to save him. Otherwise, they would not end up in such an awkward situation. We will pay 3,500,000 high-grade divine crystals. That's all the wealth on the four of us. Sir, do you still plan on contending? Please think it through before you say anything, one of the four brothers said coldly. The extra 500,000 high-grade divine crystals came from all the savings of the four brothers. 3,600,000. Jian Chen bid without any hesitation. At the same time, he let out a breath of relief. He only possessed 5 blocks of high-grade divine crystal in total right now, so he really was worried that the four brothers would bid higher than what he could afford. After all, the Thunder family was an established and glorious clan. After they had accumulated wealth for so many years, it was impossible for the Tianyuan clan to rival them. 3,600,000 going once. The hostess smiled brightly on the stage. 3,600,000 going twice. 3,600,000 going 3 times. I declare that the soul-drawing lotus has been purchased by the esteemed guest in viewing box number 98. Jian Chen successfully obtained the soul-drawing lotus, while the Lightning Brothers said nothing else. However, everyone at the auction understood that the Lightning Brothers would not just let the matter end like this. Jian Chen's feelings fluctuated as he held the soul-drawing lotus. He experienced joy and eagerness. Kaya had been unconscious for simply far too long, and it was to the point where even he could do nothing about it. Finally, there was a shred of hope now. However, Jian Chen did not leave. He remained at the auction center to see if anything else useful for him would appear. Afterwards, Jian Chen bid for a few more items. He purchased some things for his good friends that had come up from the Tianyuan continent. In this way, he spent all the remaining divine crystals he had on him. I've spent all 5 blocks of high-grade divine crystals now. The ancestor of the Mo family in the divine kingdom of Qingyang owes me things as well. Looks like I need to find some time to pay him a visit. Jian Chen felt helpless as he stared at the loose divine crystals in his space ring. Now he had returned to the life of being penniless. He probably could not even afford to stay on the top floor of the Perched Phoenix Inn. In all likelihood, no one would believe him that a mighty overgod could become so poor. The item for auction next is a supreme grade material for forging weapons, the scarlet gold Oregon. Odi took out another item. It was a special piece of metal that was the size of a head. It shone with a wondrous luster and possessed strands of the laws of metal. Originally, Jian Chen did not care for any materials, as quite a few materials had already appeared during the auction this time. Unfortunately, none of them were of any use to him. However, when he glanced at the scarlet gold or out of habit, his eyes narrowed suddenly. Master, That is the refinement adamantine. It's a material for forging the twin swords. At this moment, the voices of the sword spirits rang out. The scarlet gold, or was also the refinement adamantine. It was just that different names were used in the saints' world and the immortals' world. Jianchen immediately frowned as bitterness filled his face. The refinement adamantine just had to appear after he had spent all his divine crystals. Life was making things tough for him. Currently in Shiyu and Mo Yan's viewing box, Shiyu paid complete attention to the refinement adamantine. She was stern as she studied all the characteristics of the metal with great diligence. Very soon, her eyes lit up, as she had confirmed that this item was one of the materials their patriarch had ordered the clan to find. Chapter 1842. The two girls step up. Not only is this piece of scarlet gold or a supreme grade material, but you must be able to sense the extremely pure power of the laws of metal within it as well. If those who have comprehended the laws of metal hold this item as they cultivate, comprehending the laws of metal will become much, much easier. There's no need for me to go into further depth about its value. Alright, the bidding for the scarlet gold begins now. The starting price will be 100,000 high-grade divine crystals. OD said from the stage. 150,000 high-grade divine crystals. 200,000 high-grade divine crystals. The scarlet gold, had truly exceeded the value of other supreme-grade materials. The main reason was the pure laws of metal hidden within. Cultivation would become much easier when this item was used, so it was enough to pique the interest of all the godhood experts present who had comprehended the laws of metal. Very soon, the scarlet gold had reached a price of 500,000 high-grade divine crystals. This had completely exceeded the price of any previous supreme-grade material. The bidding war for the scarlet gold continued. For clans with overgods constantly increased the price as they engaged in a fierce struggle. They had basically taken out all their wealth to fend off each other. Shiyu sat in her viewing box with her veil on. As she listened to the bidding war outside, she became slightly confused. She murmured gently, "Isn't the scarlet gold a material that the patriarch needs? Why haven't I heard the patriarch bid? Does the patriarch plan on stepping in at the end?" "Sister Shiyu, what are you mumbling to yourself for?" Mo Yin turned her head and stared at Shiyu with her large, beautiful eyes as she listened to Shiyu murmur, "It's nothing. I'm just curious about why the patriarch isn't bidding for the scarlet gold Oregon." Before he left, he had given a list of materials he was looking for to all of us elders. He asked us to look out for these materials, and to purchase them regardless of the cost once we found them. The scarlet gold is one of the materials that the patriarch needs, but I haven't heard him bid at all, which was why I grew curious, Shiyu said with some confusion. Mo Yin came to a realization. She rolled her eyes slowly, and her face suddenly changed. "Sister Shiyu, do you think Patriarch Jianchen has run out of divine crystals? After all, he bought quite a lot of things before. He must have spent all the divine crystals on him." "That shouldn't be likely," Shiyu hesitated. Her instincts told her that it was unlikely. After all, the Patriarch was an overgod and an extremely powerful one at that. He would not be troubled by divine crystals, right? If that's really the case, but the scarlet gold has already reached a price of 1.5 million. "I don't have that much on me, so there's nothing I can do either," Shiyu frowned helplessly. In the end, the scarlet gold was purchased by the Bloodblade sect of the Divine Kingdom of Scarlet Clouds for 2 million high-grade divine crystals. The Bloodblade sect. Jianchen sat in his viewing box and stared at where the people from the Bloodblade sect resided. The light in his eyes flickered with uncertainty before becoming determined. The scarlet gold was a material crucial for the forging of the twin swords. If he missed it this time, he had no idea when he could find more of it. As a result, he could not let it go. "I'll go find the people from the Bloodblade sect once they leave the auction. I'll try to exchange for it using other things I have on me." Jianchen made up his mind and began to pay attention to the people from the Bloodblade sect secretly. The item for auction next is also a material. It's called pyrogold. Jianchen became stunned once again when the next item was taken out. He let out a long sigh as he felt extremely conflicted inside. The pyrogold was also a material for forging the twin swords. Normally, it was very difficult to find any supreme-grade materials for forging the twin swords. Yet two had appeared all of a sudden today, and it happened just when he had spent all his divine crystals. Jianchen felt extremely conflicted inside. At the same time, Shiyu recognized the pyrogold as something that their patriarch had ordered them to find as well. Her eyes immediately lit up. I've already missed one material that the patriarch has asked us to find. I have to buy the second material no matter what, but I haven't brought that many divine crystals with me. It's impossible for me to stand up to the other overgod clans in price, so it looks like I can only resort to tactics now. Shiyu thought. In another viewing box sat two elders from the Yang family. Their eyes had also lit up when they saw the pyrogold. It's pyrogold, pyrogold. The pyrogold that the ancestor ordered us to find has finally appeared. We have to obtain this pyrogold. The ancestor seems to be in desperate need of it. The two elders said softly. Excitement filled their eyes. If they managed to hand the pyrogold to the ancestor, it would be an action of great merit, and they would be rewarded accordingly. Pyrogold is only condensed as a tiny piece. There is only a minuscule chance of it condensing under the blazings of a fireland. It's a supreme-grade material, and I don't need to elaborate on its value. The starting price is 100,000 high-grade divine crystals, said OD. Our Tianyuan clan will bid 100,000 high-quality divine crystals. Shiyu's voice rang out as soon as OD finished her words. It rang through the entire auction center, and attracted the attention of countless people. Although the Tianyuan clan had only been founded recently, their fame did not falter in the face of older organizations with overgods at all. As a matter of fact, their fame had far exceeded the older organizations. This was all because of the fight between their patriarch, Jianchen, and the protector of the Earth Spirit sect, Weiner Yan. Weiner Yan had comprehended the laws of strength, but Jianchen fought him empty-handed, and achieved a landslide victory. He possessed extremely terrifying power. And in recent times, there was news that the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan had broken through once again by comprehending the laws of the sword in God King Duanmu's dwelling, shocking countless people. Basically, even most of the overgod organizations in the surrounding divine kingdoms had heard about the matter. As a result, many organizations with overgods feared the Tianyuan clan greatly. In their eyes, the threat of their patriarch was far greater than even the ancestor of the Yang family, Yang Kai. This was because he comprehended the laws of the sword. Shiyu added, the patriarch has given orders that we must purchase all the materials that he requires if we come across it. The pyrogold just happens to be one of them, so I hope everyone can hold back and allow our Tianyuan clan to obtain the pyrogold. I, Shiyu, will be filled with gratitude. Then Shiyu continued. Of course, you are still welcome to bid. There's just one thing I must clarify. The pyrogold is extremely important to our patriarch. The patriarch desires it very much, so even if you win the bid for the pyrogold, our patriarch will not give up on it. That's right, that's right. Sister Shiyu is completely right. Our patriarch Jianchen desires the pyrogold very much. Moreover, I heard that patriarch Jianchen doesn't really have a good temperament. I've heard that in the past, inside God King Duanmu's dwelling, an overgod had disrespected him. Afterwards, he slaughtered the overgod without any hesitation at all, dispersing his soul. All of you guessed just how many moves he used to kill the overgod. Mo Yin also jumped into the action. She winked at Shiyu cleverly as she said these words with great interest. You definitely won't be able to guess it, so let me tell you. It was one move. Patriarch Jianchen used a total of one move to kill an overgod. You gods may not believe this, but do go back to your clans and ask your overgod seniors about the truth of this matter. There were so many overgods present when it happened back then. Mo Yin giggled. She felt proud. Although she did not see it happen, she had heard all about it. Chapter 1843. The threat of the Yang family 1. All the people with overgods backing them up hesitated when they heard Shiyu mention how their patriarch, Jianchen, desired the pyrogold very much. Deep fear filled their eyes. Back when the news of God King Duanmu's dwelling appearing in the Dong'an province of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian broke out, basically all the overgods had taken part in the fight for the God King's fortune. They would naturally be familiar with Jianqin. This time, when they came to the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian to take part in the centennial auction hosted by the Imperial United Merchants Association, their ancestors had all warned them to never offend the Tianyuan clan. Even if they had to offend the Yang family, they could not offend the Tianyuan clan. Everyone realized that the Tianyuan clan could not be trifled with from the warnings of their ancestors. So the people who were originally interested in the pyrogold all hesitated when they heard that the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan required the item. The people with overgods backing them did not doubt what Mo Yin added at the end, where she talked about how Jianqin had killed an overgod in a single move. They did not doubt it because their ancestors had witnessed it, and told them that such a matter had indeed occurred. Even though it was only an early overgod, it was indeed just a single move. However, those people who did not sit within the viewing boxes did not believe the matter. They all began to voice their doubts. Quite a few of them were gods. Shi Yu and Mo Yin were in no mood to clear up the doubts. They only hoped to deter the organizations with overgods and make them back off and not take part in the competition. It was not important to the two girls whether the people who were irrelevant to the auction of this item believed whether Jianqin had truly killed an overgod in a single stroke. Since the pyrogold is something that the patriarch requires, our Guhan clan will not take part in the bidding. A middle-aged man stood before the window of a viewing box. He clasped his hands toward Shi Yu with a smile and spoke extremely politely. It's the patriarch of the Guhan clan. I thank the patriarch very much for stepping back. Shi Yu clasped her fist back at him. The Guhan clan was an overgod clan in the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. Recently, they had been on good terms with the Tianyuan clan. Haha, we originally planned to buy the pyrogold as well, but I never thought that the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan would require it. If that's the case, our Ling family won't take part in the bidding either. The window of another viewing box had opened. The patriarch of the Ling family from the sword-seeking province stood there. He smiled amicably. Thanks to Jianqin's support, the Tianyuan clan possessed some deterrence within the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. Excluding the clans from the 5 provincial cities, even many overgod organizations within the royal capital feared the Tianyuan clan slightly. Afterwards, basically all the overgod clans from within the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian declared that they would give up on the item, whether they had been interested in it in the first place or not. They had done it out of respect for the Tianyuan clan, as well as to show their kind intentions. After the overgod clans from the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian, the organizations from other divine kingdoms did not fall behind either. They all expressed their intentions. Even clans who were truly interested in the pyrogold could not help but give up on it after weighing the cost and benefits. They all took their ancestors' warnings to heart. They would never offend the Tianyuan clan. Although the pyrogold was a supreme grade material that was rare in this part of the world, it was just a piece of rock after all. There was no need to offend a powerful overgod over a material. The 2 elders of the Yang family who also sat in viewing boxes were currently uneasy. They were hesitant. I never thought that the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan would also require the pyrogold, and that he would need it dearly. But our ancestor also needs it very much. Do we engage in a battle with the Tianyuan clan for the pyrogold? One of the elders asked. He was anxious inside. The other elder said after some thought, if we take part in the bidding, we'll definitely offend the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. We can't mess around. In my opinion, we should report to the ancestor as soon as possible and get the ancestor to make a decision on this matter. Let's not tarry then. Let's go back now. The 2 elders did not watch the rest of the auction unfold. They left the auction in a hurry to return to the Yang family. No one else bid for the pyrogold in the huge auction center. The hostess was helpless about the situation. The value of the pyrogold was definitely more than that. In regular auctions, it could go for at least 500,000 high-grade divine crystals, but she could only let the Tianyuan clan get it for a bargain now. In the end, Shi Yu obtained the pyrogold for 100,000 high-grade divine crystals. Even when the next item for auction was brought up, Jianchen still had not returned to his senses. He remained seated in his viewing box as he stared at where Shiyu was. Surprise was plastered across his face. Not only had he come across the two girls out of complete surprise here, but Shiyu had even used a method he had never even thought of to purchase the pyrogold at a reduced price. A while later, Jianchen shook his head with a faint smile. He murmured, "I never thought that I would have so much prestige." I wasn't surprised by how the people from the 5 provincial cities had backed out. After all, I had worked with their ancestors in the past. I just never thought that the overgod clans from other divine kingdoms would do this for me. It's really quite surprising. It was also at this moment that Jianchen could not help but think back to the time when he and Xinjian had first come to the Saints' World. They had encountered the early god ancestor of the Lu family, Lu Tian, and engaged in a battle of life and death. Yet now, in less than a century, he who had struggled in a fight against an early god had already become an expert feared by most overgod clans. Jianchen could not help but become amazed by such a great change. The auction continued. Overgod level formation discs and truth tier battle skills that were enough to pique the interest of overgods appeared later on. Each and every one of these items were sold for an astronomical price of over 100,000 high-grade divine crystals. Even organizations with overgods and rich heritages would become interested in treasures like that. It led to a brutal struggle between many organizations. Even when the powerful clans feared by many took part, it was not enough to cause even a pause in the bidding. Every single item held great significance for clans. Their influence would be extremely great, so it was directly tied to the future of the clan. However, the Tianyuan clan did not take part. It was not because the Tianyuan clan already had these items. Rather, it was because they lacked the wealth. The pyrogold was only a supreme grade material, which was enough to deter people from taking part. However, before overgod level formation discs and truth tier battle skills for overgods, it was naturally impossible. At the same time, the two elders who had just left the auction politely stood with Yang Aoran before the door to a secret room in the forbidden grounds of the Yang family. "Why have you disturbed me during my secluded cultivation?" A dignified voice rang out from the room. It was the ancestor of the Yang family, Yang Kai. Yang Aoran and the two elders immediately bowed deeply. One of the elders said, "Ancestor, we found the pyrogold that you require in the centennial auction of the Imperial United Merchants Association." "What? You found the pyrogold?" Yang Kai's excited voice rang out from within the secret room. It was filled with much joy. However, he calmed down very quickly. He asked, "Have you come across problems in obtaining the pyrogold?" The ancestor is wise. The patriarch of the Tianyuan clan is also in desperate need of the pyrogold. And in recent times, there are rumors that the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan has broken through once again in God King Duanmu's dwelling. If we bid for the pyrogold, it would be extremely likely that we would offend the Tianyuan clan. As the matter relates to just too much, we were unable to make the decision, which is why we've come to you, ancestor, said the elder. The voice fell silent again. Yang Kai only spoke out after quite a while. "Who from the Tianyuan clan has come to the royal capital? Is Jianchen here?" "Ancestor, it's Elder Shiyu of the Tianyuan clan. We are unable to determine the whereabouts of their patriarch. Recently, he appeared in the Ling family of the sword-seeking province. Also, Elder Lu of our clan was slain by an unknown overgod 3 days ago in the royal capital," Yang Aoran said politely. He explained the matter of Elder Lu's death to the ancestor in detail, and did his best to cover up Yang Tai's responsibility. He pushed all the blame onto the overgod that they had yet to identify. Put the matter of Elder Lu's death aside for now. The pyrogold is extremely important to me, so we must obtain it as soon as possible. Yang Aoran set off personally with Yang Lianxin and some elders. "You must invite Shiyu to the clan." Yang Kai's voice rang out from the secret room. The two elders who had returned from the auction shivered inside. Yang Aoran and Yang Lianxin were the two most powerful gods in the Yang family so far. They were both late gods, and they had grasped extraordinary battle skills. In battle, regular late gods were not their opponents. They had never expected the ancestor to send both of them together. Chapter 1844. The Threat of the Yang Family. 2. The centennial auction held by the Imperial United Merchants Association ended. The people who had gathered for it all dispersed. It was especially quiet when the people left. From time to time, there would be people who would glance at the viewing boxes. Their gazes would be filled with curiosity, flicker with uncertainty, or be completely calm. It simply had to be mentioned that quite a lot of impressive items had appeared in the auction this time. However, as with most auctions with treasures, there would be bloody conflict after it. It would never be peaceful. This was very common in the saints' world, and it was nothing new. People could die for wealth. In the saints' world, there would always be quite a lot of people who would be willing to risk their lives in an attempt to obtain their own fortune, so that they could forge a brand new tomorrow through their personal hard work. The people from the Overgod clans slowly made their way outside. All the organizations with overgods had sent several gods to partake in the auction this time. Even though that was the case, a few people who had managed to purchase great treasures remained cautious. Even when they were protected by many elders from their clans, they still would not drop their guard. All of them understood that even if they came from clans with overgods and possessed a great background, there would still be many independent cultivators who would eye the items in their possession while paying no heed to the clan behind them. At this moment, slight ripples of space appeared in a few viewing boxes. Some people had taken out teleportation discs and teleported away in the boxes. Without a single exception, these people had all managed to purchase priceless treasures in the auction. They had left using teleportation formations to prevent others from robbing them. They were being extremely cautious. As a high-quality material, the pyrogold was also valuable, and it was worth 500,000 high-grade divine crystals at the very least. However, the people who carried it, Shiyu and Mo Yen, showed no worry at all. They were especially relaxed, and they even seemed to be excited over the reward that they would receive. "Sister Shiyu, let's go and find Patriarch Jianchen," Mo Yen said to Shiyu. She smiled mischievously as she pulled Shiyu out of the viewing box by her hand. Shiyu nodded. The pyrogold was something that Jianchen needed, so she wanted to hand it over to him as soon as possible, as it would only be truly safe with him. "Let's go and find that person who purchased the soul-drawing lotus. We have to get it no matter what, or the Grand Elder won't be able to last for another 100 years. The Lightning Brothers from the Thunder family of the Divine Kingdom of Ethercloud also stood up, and directly made their way towards Jianchen's viewing box. Jianchen remained seated leisurely in his viewing box. He had not left yet. He had already expanded the senses of his soul, which enveloped a viewing box on the other side. The viewing box in question belonged to the people from the Bloodblade sect of the Divine Kingdom of Scarlet Clouds. These people had purchased the refinement adamantine. Every inch of the auction center was covered with powerful formations, so Jianchen was unable to send his senses into the viewing box without destroying the formations. As a result, he could only surround the viewing box's exterior. He would discover them as soon as they came out. At this moment, a slight ripple of space was emitted from the viewing box, which immediately caused Jianchen's expression to change slightly. "Oh no, they're leaving through a teleportation formation disc," Jianchen thought. The people from the Bloodblade sect are only gods at most, so the teleportation formation disc they possess can't be too powerful. Naturally, they won't be able to travel too far, Jianchen thought. He leapt up and shot out of his viewing box as a blur, leaving the auction center. The Lightning Brothers just happened to see Jianchen leave. They naturally took it as him fearing them, so he wanted to flee with the soul-drawing lotus. Without any hesitation, the Lightning Brothers pursued him as quickly as possible. Before long, Shiyu and Mo Yen arrived at Jianchen's viewing box. Just as they had expected, they failed to find Jianchen. On the streets of the royal capital, Jianchen worked out the position of the Divine Kingdom of Scarlet Clouds before immediately rushing off. At the same time, he completely expanded the senses of his soul, hoping to find traces of the Bloodblade sect. However, the royal capital was covered with formations, which restricted Jianchen's range. He was only able to cover several hundred kilometers. "I have to leave the vicinity of the royal capital to find the people from the Bloodblade sect." Jianchen strode through the streets. The ground seemed to shrink below him. allowing him to traverse several thousand meters with each step. He moved faster and faster. Behind him were the Lightning Brothers. Sparks flickered around them. They had already used a secret technique, and they currently pursued Jianchen at full speed. Of course, this was not their true full speed. It was just that they were in the royal capital, so whether it was the four brothers or Jianchen, they all had to follow the rules of the royal capital, which forbid flying. Otherwise, they would have been able to move even faster. This person sure is fast. We actually almost can't catch up to him. Looks like he has comprehended the laws of wind, or he knows a battle skill that increases his speed. The Lightning Brothers communicated with each other. Even though Jianchen grew further and further away, they did not give up and continued to closely pursue him. We're unable to use our full speed in the royal capital. Once we leave the royal capital, catching up to him with our speed won't be difficult, one of them growled. That's right. He can't escape once he leaves the royal capital. Before long, Jianchen left the royal capital. He sat on the ground and shut his eyes. The senses of his soul expanded out in all directions. In just a single instance, it covered a range of 10 million kilometers, and the range constantly increased. There's no sign of the Bloodblade sect within 10 million kilometers. Jianchen continued to expand the senses of his soul. None in 20 million kilometers. None in 30 million kilometers. None in 40 million kilometers. When Jianchen's senses of the soul expanded to 50 million kilometers, he finally found the whereabouts of the people from the Bloodblade sect. At that moment, the four elders from the Bloodblade sect were not in a good situation. As a matter of fact, it was completely horrible. The four of them were trapped in a single killing formation together. At the same time, four streaks of lightning flickered behind Jianchen. The Lightning Brothers had caught up and surrounded Jianchen. Sir, the soul-drawing lotus is extremely important to us, so please hand it over. Otherwise, we can only cause you offense, one of the four brothers said emotionlessly with his fist clasped towards Jianchen. Jianchen receded his senses and slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the four of them calmly and said, "The soul-drawing lotus is extremely important to me as well, so I cannot give it up. If that's the case, we can only cause you offense." The faces of the Lightning Brothers turned cold. Suddenly, a powerful presence erupted from them, and it swept towards Jianchen. Sparks flickered on their bodies, and there seemed to be the vague sounds of thunder. "I don't have that much time to waste on you, but I have heard that the four of you know a combination attack that allows you to stand up to even over gods when you use it. I'll give you the chance to use it." Jianchen withstood their presences easily and said calmly, "If you sir wants to witness our combination attack, then we'll help you fulfill that wish," the Lightning Brothers said sternly. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.